On my 70th birthday, my son didn't just forget me. He erased me. While I sat alone in a diner eating cold pancakes, he was popping champagne at a $650,000 lake house he bought for his in-laws. With money he stole from me. He thought I was just a broke old man enjoying his twilight years. He had no idea that the broke old man owned the bank that held his mortgage. When he called me crying 53 times, begging me to stop the eviction, I only had one thing to say. It is far too late for apologies. But before I tell you how I foreclosed on my own son, let me know where you are listening from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people you raised. I sat in the corner booth of a Denny's off Interstate 95. It was 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The fluorescent lights hummed with that headache-inducing flicker that only lonely people seem to notice. My meal was simple, a grand slam breakfast. Scrambled eggs, bacon, pancakes that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. I wasn't eating. I was staring at my phone. It sat on the Formica table like a black brick, silent, dark. I am Isaiah Freeman, but everyone calls me Zeke. For 40 years, I ran construction crews across this state. I built hospitals, I built schools, I poured the concrete foundations that this city stands on. When I retired 5 years ago, everyone thought I was just a worn-out foreman living on a pension. Even my son Dante thought that. He saw my 10-year-old Chevy Silverado and my small brick house in the suburbs and assumed I was scraping by. He didn't know about the municipal bonds. He didn't know about the real estate portfolio I built quietly while he was busy trying to impress his friends. He didn't know I was sitting on $8 million of liquid assets. I never told him because I wanted him to build his own man. I wanted him to have the hunger. But tonight, as the clock ticked past 8:15, I realized the hunger had turned him into something else. A vulture. My wife Lucille died 3 years ago. She was the only one who made a fuss about my birthday. She would bake a lemon pound cake and we would dance in the kitchen to old Sam Cooke records. Since she passed, the silence in my house has been loud enough to break glass. Today I turned 70. The big 7-0. A milestone. I thought Dante would call. I thought maybe he would stop by. I didn't expect a party. I just expected an acknowledgement that I was still alive. Then the screen lit up. My heart jumped. I thought maybe Dante was late. Maybe he had a flat tire. Maybe he was planning a surprise party and he was just running behind schedule. But it wasn't a text. It was a Facebook notification. Dante Freeman is live. I tapped the screen. The video loaded. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the empty booth. I saw my son. He was wearing a white linen suit that looked expensive. He was holding a bottle of Dom Perignon. But he wasn't at my house. He wasn't at a hospital. He was standing on a massive wooden deck overlooking a pristine lake that reflected the setting sun. "Hey everyone!" Dante shouted into the camera, his face flushed with alcohol and pride. "We are here at Lake Lanier celebrating a huge milestone." I leaned in closer. Milestone. Maybe he remembered. Maybe this was for me. He turned the camera. Standing next to him was his wife Tiffany. She was wearing a sundress and a hat that probably cost more than my truck. And sitting in two throne-like Adirondack chairs were her parents, Bill and Susan Montgomery. They looked like they owned the world. Bill was smoking a cigar and Susan was holding a glass of wine, looking at the camera with that condescending smile she always saved for me. "Happy 30th anniversary to the best in-laws a guy could ask for," Dante yelled. "And to celebrate, we got you a little something." He swept his arm out, encompassing the house behind them. It was a sprawling two-story property with floor-to-ceiling windows and a private dock. "Welcome to your new lake house," Dante announced. $650,000 of prime real estate. Paid for by yours truly, because the Montgomerys deserve the best. We love you, Mom and Dad. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. $650,000. My son, who claimed he was struggling to pay his car insurance last month, had just dropped over $500,000 on a vacation home for people who treated him like the help. Bill Montgomery took a puff of his cigar and laughed. "You did good, boy. Finally put that commission money to good use. You know quality when you see it." Susan chimed in, her voice shrill. "Oh, Dante, it is beautiful. Finally a place where we can relax away from the city. You are such a good son. Not like some people we know." I knew who she meant. She meant me, the old black man who lived in a small house and didn't fit into their country club aesthetic. But that wasn't what broke me. As Dante raised his hand to toast, I saw it. The video quality was crisp, high definition. On his left wrist, glinting in the sunset, was a watch, a gold Rolex day date with a champagne dial. I stopped breathing. I knew that watch. I bought that watch in 1985 to celebrate my first big contract. It had a small scratch on the bezel near the 6. I zoomed in on the video. There it was, the scratch. That watch was supposed to be in my wall safe. I had checked the safe last week and it was empty, but I thought I had misplaced it. I thought my memory was slipping. I thought I was getting old, but I wasn't getting old. I was getting robbed. My son had stolen my watch, the watch I planned to leave him in my will. He stole it to wear to a party where he was buying a mansion for another man. He didn't just forget my birthday. He financed his betrayal with my property. I watched a few more seconds. I watched Tiffany kiss Dante on the cheek. I watched them laugh. I watched them celebrate their theft. I pressed the power button on my phone, turning the screen black. I saw my reflection in the dark glass. I looked tired. I looked gray, but my eyes were hard. The waitress came over with the check. "Everything okay, hon?" she asked, seeing my untouched food. "You didn't eat a bite." "I am full," I said, my voice steady. "I am very full." I pulled out my wallet. I took out a $100 bill and placed it on the table. "Keep the change," I said. I stood up. My knees popped. I put on my old baseball cap. I walked out of the diner and into the humid night air. I walked to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached into my glove box and pulled out a burner phone I used for my private business dealings. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice. "Luther Vance Law Firm." A gruff voice answered. "Luther, it is Zeke," I said. There was a pause. "Zeke Freeman? I haven't heard from you since we closed the deal on the downtown plaza. Happy birthday, old man." Luther remembered. My lawyer remembered. My son did not. "I need a favor, Luther," I said. "And I need it tonight. Name it Zeke. I need you to find out who holds the deed to a property on Lake Lanier. I have the address." It was in the background of a video. "Lake Lanier," Luther asked. "That is pricey territory. Who are we looking for?" "My son," I said. "Or rather, the people he is trying to impress. I need to know whose name is on the deed. I need to know who financed it, and I need to know if my name is anywhere on the paperwork." "You think he used your identity?" Luther asked, his voice dropping an octave. "I know he has my watch, Luther," I said. "If he has the combination to the safe, he has my social security card. He has my deed. He has everything." "I will make some calls," Luther said. "I can access the county registrar database from home. Give me an hour." I gave him the details I could glean from the video. Then I hung up. I started the truck. The engine roared to life, a sound I usually loved, but tonight it sounded like a growl. I drove home. My house was dark. No surprise party waiting. No balloons. Just the silence of a life built on hard work and sacrifice. I went straight to the safe in my study. It was hidden behind a painting of Lucille. I spun the dial. It opened. Empty. Not just the watch. The folder with my bonds. The cash reserve I kept for emergencies. About $20,000. Gone. He had cleaned me out. He had come into my house probably while I was at the cemetery visiting his mother, and he had stripped me bare. And he used it to buy a lake house for Bill and Susan Montgomery. I sat in my leather chair in the dark. I looked at the empty safe. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. But it was a cold tear. My phone buzzed. It was Luther. "Zeke, I have the file," he said. "You are not going to like this." "Tell me," I said. "The house is in Dante's name, co-signed by Tiffany. But here is the kicker. The down payment was $150,000, cash, and there is a secondary lien on the property, a home equity line of credit. Against what I asked, though, I already knew." "Against your house," Zeke, Luther said softly. "He forged your signature. He took out a HELOC on your home to pay for their home. If they miss a payment, the bank takes your house." I closed my eyes. My house. The house Lucille died in. The house we paid off 20 years ago. He had put it on the chopping block to buy a view for his in-laws. "Okay," I said. "Okay," Luther asked. "Zeke, we need to call the police. This is fraud. This is elder abuse. We can have him arrested tonight. No, I said. No, Zeke, he stole your house. I know, I said, opening my eyes. I looked at the empty spot on the wall where the watch case used to be. If I arrest him now, he goes to jail and he learns nothing, I said. He will blame me. He will play the victim. He will say I am a bitter old man who ruined his life. So what are you going to do? Luther asked. I am going to let him keep the house, I said. For a few days, I am going to let him feel like a king. And then I am going to show him who really wears the crown. I have a plan, Luther. But I need you to prepare some paperwork. What kind of paperwork? I want to buy the debt, I said. What? Find out which bank holds the mortgage on the lake house, I said. It is probably a subprime lender if Dante's credit is as bad as I think it is. I want to buy the note. I want to become the bank. Zeke, that is diabolical. Luther chuckled. He forgot my birthday, Luther. He stole my watch. He mortgaged my memories. I don't want him in prison. I want him homeless. I hung up the phone. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I raised it to the empty room. Happy birthday, Zeke, I whispered. Tomorrow I would go to the lake house. I wouldn't go as the owner of the mortgage. Not yet. I would go as the broke old father. I would give them one chance to show me an ounce of decency, just one, and if they failed, well, they were about to find out that the foundation they were standing on was made of quicksand, and I was the one holding the hose. The morning sun hit the cracked windshield of my 2004 Chevy Silverado, but it brought no warmth. It was just a harsh spotlight on the rust spots on the hood and the dust dancing in the cab. I drove slowly. I wasn't in a rush. A man driving to his own execution does not speed, and in a way that is what this felt like. I was driving to execute the memory of the son I thought I had raised. Luther had texted me the address at midnight. It was a gated community on the north shore of the lake, the kind of place where the driveways were made of pavers instead of asphalt, and the mailboxes cost more than my monthly electric bill. I pulled up to the security gate. The guard looked at my truck, then at me. I saw the judgment in his eyes. He saw a 70-year-old black man in a faded work shirt and assumed I was there to fix a leak or trim a hedge. I gave him Dante's name. He made a call. The gate opened. It was too easy. That was the thing about wealth built on sand. It always looked accessible until the tide came in. I drove through the winding streets, passing houses that looked like hotels, manicured lawns, fountains, statues of lions that had no business being in Georgia. Finally, I saw it. The house from the video. It was even bigger in person. A white monstrosity with columns that tried too hard to look southern and windows that tried too hard to look modern. The driveway was full. A Range Rover, a Porsche, and my son's leased BMW. I parked my truck right behind the Porsche, blocking it in. It was a petty move, but I was feeling petty. I turned off the engine. It shuddered and died with a loud clank that echoed off the expensive siding of the neighbor's house. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were calloused from 40 years of pouring concrete. They were strong hands, but right now they were shaking. I got out. I didn't bring a gift. The gift was me. The gift was the chance for them to do the right thing. I walked up the stone path. I could hear music thumping from inside. It was 11 in the morning on a Wednesday. Most people were working. My son and his in-laws were partying. I reached the front door. It was massive, mahogany with frosted glass. I rang the doorbell. I heard the chime echo inside, followed by laughter and the sound of footsteps. The door swung open. It wasn't Dante, it was Tiffany. She was wearing a white silk robe that looked like it cost a fortune, holding a mimosa in one hand. Her hair was wrapped in a towel. When she saw me, her smile vanished, instantly replaced by a look of pure annoyance, like she had found a roach in her salad. "Zeke," she said. She didn't say, "Hello." She didn't say, "Happy birthday." She didn't say, "Come in." She just said my name like it was a dirty word. "Hello, Tiffany," I said, my voice raspy. "I came to see Dante." She didn't move out of the doorway. She actually planted her feet, blocking the entrance. She took a sip of her drink, looking me up and down. Her eyes lingered on my work boots, which had a little bit of dried mud on the heel from my walk to the truck. "Zeke, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp. "We are having a private celebration, a family thing." "I am family." "Tiffany," I said quietly. "I am his father." She rolled her eyes. "You know what I mean. The Montgomerys are here. We are celebrating their anniversary. It is a very intimate brunch, and honestly we weren't expecting guests, especially not unannounced ones. She looked past me at my truck parked behind the Porsche. And you can't park that thing there. Bill wants to take the Porsche out for a spin later. You are blocking him in. I stepped forward, intending to walk past her. I had built houses like this. I knew how to walk through a door. Is Dante here? I asked again, louder this time. Tiffany put a hand on my chest. It was a light touch, but the disrespect was heavy. Whoa, hold on, Zeke, she snapped. You cannot come in. Look at your shoes. You are going to track dirt all over the travertine floors. We just had them polished. This isn't a construction site. I looked at her hand on my chest. I looked at her eyes. There was no warmth, no empathy, just cold, hard snobbery. She didn't see a father-in-law. She saw a stain. I took a deep breath. I removed her hand from my chest. I didn't squeeze. I just moved it. Get my son Tiffany, I said. My voice was low, but it had the rumble of a generator. Get him now. She hesitated. She must have seen something in my eyes because she took a half step back. Fine, she huffed. Wait here, and don't touch anything. She turned and walked away, leaving the door open just a crack. I stood on the porch. I could hear them inside. I heard Bill's booming laugh. I heard the clinking of silverware. I smelled bacon and expensive coffee. It smelled like the life I could have given Dante if I hadn't been so busy trying to teach him character. A minute later, Dante appeared. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot and he was wearing a silk pajama set that matched the robe Tiffany was wearing. But on his wrist, the gold Rolex was still there. My Rolex. It caught the morning light, mocking me. When he saw me, his face went pale. It wasn't the pallor of a hangover. It was the pallor of guilt. He looked over his shoulder, checking to see if anyone was watching. Then he slipped out the door and closed it behind him, forcing us to stand on the porch. Dad, he whispered, his voice tight. What are you doing here? How did you find this place? I looked at him. I looked at the man I had raised, the boy I had taught to fish, the teenager I had taught to drive. I saw a stranger. It was my birthday yesterday, Dante, I said. I waited at Denny's for 2 hours. Dante flinched. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking everywhere but at me. Oh, right, he said, letting out a nervous chuckle. Dad, I am so sorry. I completely forgot. You know how it is. With the closing on the house and the Montgomerys flying in, it has been crazy. Just crazy. I lost track of the days. You lost track of the days, I repeated. But you remembered to steal my watch. He froze. He instinctively covered his left wrist with his right hand. I didn't steal it. Dad, he stammered. I borrowed it. I wanted to wear something nice for the closing. I was going to bring it back, I swear. You went into my safe. Dante, I said. You went into my house and you took it. I needed it, Dad, he hissed, stepping closer, his voice dropping to an aggressive whisper. You don't wear it. It just sits there. I am out here making moves. I am building a future. I need to look the part. You are retired. You are just chilling. What do you need a Rolex for at Denny's? The words hit me like a hammer. You are just chilling, as if my life was over, as if I was just waiting to die so he could take the rest. I looked at the house. $650,000. You bought this house, I said. Yeah, Dante said, puffing his chest out a little, the arrogance returning. Nice, right? Lakefront. Private dock. Bill and Susan love it. It is the least I could do. They have been so supportive. Supportive, I asked. Did they pay for it? No. Dad. I paid for it, Dante snapped. I am the provider. That is what men do. We provide. With whose money, Dante, I asked. He narrowed his eyes. My money. My commission. Look, Dad, I don't have time for this interrogation. We are in the middle of a toast. Bill is opening a bottle of vintage scotch. I have to go back inside. He reached for the door handle. You are kicking me out, I asked. I am not kicking you out, Dad. Dante sighed, looking exhausted by my presence. I am just saying, this isn't a good time. You don't fit in with this crowd. Bill and Susan, they are different. They are sophisticated. You know, you would just be uncomfortable. He was ashamed of me. He was ashamed of his black father in his work boots standing in front of his white in-laws. Go home, Dad, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Go home and watch TV. I will stop by next week. We can grab a burger or something. I will bring the watch back then. Okay, Just go. He opened the door. The sound of the party spilled out again. Laughter, music, the smell of success bought on credit. From the back of the hallway a voice boomed out. It was Bill Montgomery. I could see him through the crack in the door holding a glass of amber liquid, wearing a polo shirt tucked into khaki shorts. He looked at the door. He saw Dante standing there. He saw the sliver of me in my work shirt and cap. "Hey, Dante." Bill shouted, his voice slurring slightly. "Is that the help? Tell the gardener to go around the back. I don't want him tracking mud through the foyer." My heart stopped. The gardener. He thought I was the gardener. I looked at Dante. I waited. This was it. This was the moment. All he had to do was say, "No, Bill, that is my father. That is the man who paid for my college. That is the man who built this city." Dante looked at Bill. Then he looked at me. I saw the calculation in his eyes. I saw the shame. I saw the choice. He looked back at Bill and forced a smile. "Yeah, Bill," Dante called back. "It is just the yard guy. I am handling it. He is leaving now." He looked at me one last time, his eyes cold and dead. "You heard him, Dad. Use the service entrance if you need to leave a note. Otherwise, just go. Please, before you embarrass me." He stepped inside and slammed the door in my face. I stood there. The echo of the slamming door rang in my ears. The gardener. He had reduced me to the help. He had denied me. He had erased me. I looked at the closed door. I looked at the massive house. I looked at the Porsche I had blocked in. I didn't knock again. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I turned around and walked down the stone path. My boots crunched on the gravel. I walked to my truck. I climbed in. I sat there for a moment looking at the house. I took a deep breath. The air tasted metallic, like blood in my mouth. "Okay, Dante," I whispered to the empty cab. "You want me to be the gardener? I will be the gardener." I started the engine. "But I am not going to plant flowers," I said, putting the truck in gear. "I am going to pull up the weeds. And son, you are the biggest weed in the yard." I backed out of the driveway, leaving tire marks on the pristine lawn. I didn't look back. I had work to do. I had a bank to visit, and I had a mortgage to buy. The party was just getting started, but the eviction notice was already being written in my head, and the ink was going to be red. I drove away from the lake house with the taste of bile in my throat, but by the time I pulled into my own driveway, the humiliation had hardened into something cold and heavy, like a bag of wet cement. My house was small. It was a single-story brick ranch built in the 70s. It was nothing compared to the white-columned monstrosity my son had just bought for the Montgomerys, but it was mine. It was paid for, and it was the place where I had held my wife's hand as she took her last breath. I walked inside. The air was stale. It smelled of old paper and silence. I went straight to my study. I needed to understand the scope of the damage. I knew the watch was gone. I knew the cash from the safe was gone. But a man who steals a watch doesn't stop there. A man who calls his father the gardener to impress his in-laws doesn't have a floor to his betrayal. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I logged into my primary checking account. The balance was normal. I checked my investment portfolio. It was untouched. For a moment I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe he had just taken the loose items. Maybe he hadn't touched the structural integrity of my finances. Then the phone rang. It was a landline number. I almost never answered the landline anymore. It was usually telemarketers or scammers. But today I picked it up. "Is this Isaiah Freeman?" "Yes," I said. "Mr. Freeman, this is Sarah from the Fraud Prevention Department at First Horizon Bank. We are calling regarding the past due payment on your home equity line of credit. We noticed it hasn't been paid this month, and we wanted to verify if this was an oversight before we report it to the credit bureaus." I froze. My hand gripped the receiver so hard the plastic creaked. "I don't have a home equity line of credit," I said, my voice calm but my heart hammering against my ribs. "My house is paid off. I burned the mortgage note 20 years ago." There was a pause on the line, the clicking of a keyboard. "Well, sir, according to our records, a HELOC was opened in your name 3 months ago. The total draw was $150,000. The funds were wired to a title company in Georgia. $150,000. The number echoed in my head. It was the exact amount needed for a 20% down payment on a $650,000 house. The lake house. He didn't just use his commission. He didn't just use his savings. He used my house. He mortgaged the roof over my head to buy a palace for people who wouldn't let me use the front door. "Sarah," I said, my voice dropping to a low rumble, I did not authorize that loan. Sir, do you want to dispute this charge? If this is identity theft, we need to freeze the account and open an investigation. We will need to file a police report. I looked at the picture of Lucille on my desk. I looked at the empty space in the safe. If I filed a police report right now, Dante would be in handcuffs by dinner time. He would be charged with grand larceny, bank fraud, and identity theft. Not yet, I said. Sir, send me the documents, I said. Send me the application. Send me the signature page. I need to see it first. I can email them to you immediately, Mr. Freeman, but I strongly advise, just send them, I snapped. I hung up. 2 minutes later, my inbox pinged. I opened the PDF. There it was. My name, my social security number, my address, and at the bottom of the page, a signature. Isaiah Freeman. It looked like my signature. It had the same slant, the same loop on the F. He had practiced. He had studied my handwriting just like he used to study my blueprints when he was a boy wanting to be like his dad. But there was a hesitation in the ink, a tiny tremor at the end of the name. It was a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. I scrolled down to the disbursement section. The funds were wired to North Star Title Agency. Reference number Lakeview Estate Closing. I closed the laptop. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I felt a strange detachment, like I was inspecting a building that had failed a stress test. The cracks were visible. The foundation was rotten. The only option was demolition. I grabbed the file folder containing my real deed, my real financial statements, and the printout of the forged loan. I walked out to my truck. I drove to the city. I didn't go to the police station. I went to a glass building downtown where the name Vance and Associates was etched on the door. Luther was waiting for me. He had a bottle of bourbon on his desk and 2 glasses. He took one look at my face and poured a double. You were right, I said, throwing the papers onto his mahogany desk. Luther picked them up. He put on his reading glasses. He scanned the documents. He let out a low whistle. He mortgaged your house, Zeke. He put a lien on your primary residence. If he defaults, they foreclose on you. They take the house Lucille died in. He took $150,000, I said, sitting down heavily in the leather chair. That was the down payment. The rest of the mortgage on that lake house. I bet if you dig deeper, you will find he used me as a guarantor for that, too. Luther typed furiously on his computer. He accessed a credit database. He frowned. You are right. There is a jumbo loan for $500,000 with a secondary signature. Yours. Or rather, his version of yours. Zeke, this is 20 years in prison. Minimum. Federal charges, wire fraud, bank fraud. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned going down. Good. I needed to feel something other than the numbness. Call the detective, Luther said, reaching for his phone. I know a guy in the fraud unit. We can have a squad car at the lake house in an hour. We can humiliate him in front of the Montgomerys. It will be swift. Put the phone down, Luther, I said. Luther stopped. He looked at me over his glasses. Zeke, he stole your house. He stole your legacy. I know, I said. And if we arrest him now, he becomes a victim. He will cry to the judge. He will say he was desperate. He will say he intended to pay it back. He will get a plea deal. Maybe 5 years. Maybe probation if he cries loud enough. So what do you want? Luther asked. I want him to feel it, I said. I want him to feel the earth crumble. I want him to lose the house. I want him to lose the wife. I want him to lose the in-laws he bought. I want him standing in the rubble of his life, realizing that he struck the match. I leaned forward. Buy the note, I said. Luther blinked. Buy the note. You mean the lake house mortgage? Yes. You said it was a jumbo loan. Who holds it? Luther checked the screen. It is a mid-sized regional bank. Southern Trust. They are aggressive. They are also over-leveraged, I said. I know their VP. I played golf with him last month. They are looking to offload risky assets. A $500,000 loan to a guy with shaky credit and a forged co-signer. That is a toxic asset. You want to buy the mortgage, I asked. I want to buy the debt, I said. Create a shell company. Call it Justice Holdings. Buy the mortgage from Southern Trust. Buy the HELOC debt from First Horizon. I want to own every cent he owes. Zeke, that will cost you nearly $700,000, liquid, Luther warned. I have $8 million, Luther, I said. I can afford it. But why, Luther asked. Why spend your own money to buy his debt? Because when you own the debt, you own the man, I said. I don't want the bank to foreclose on him. I want to foreclose on him. I want to be the one who sends the eviction notice. I want to be the one who tells Bill and Susan Montgomery to get off my property." Luther stared at me for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face. It was a shark's smile. "Justice Holdings," he mused. "I like it. I can have the paperwork ready in 48 hours. We can approach Southern Trust tomorrow morning. If we offer cash, they will sell the note at a discount. They won't even ask questions." "Good," I said. "And Luther?" "Yeah, don't tell him. Not yet. Let him have his party. Let him sleep in that big bed overlooking the lake. Let him think he got away with it." I stood up. I felt lighter. The heavy bag of cement in my chest had been replaced by something harder. Steel. I walked to the window and looked out at the city I had helped build. I had poured concrete for 40 years. I knew that if you poured concrete over a crack, it would just break again. You had to tear it out. You had to dig deep. My son was the crack. "I am going home, Luther," I said. "I have to pack." "Pack? Where are you going?" "Arizona," I said. "Scottsdale. You are moving." "I am selling my house," I said. Luther looked confused. "But you just said you didn't want to lose it." "I don't want to lose it to the bank," I said, "but I can't live there anymore." He violated it. He came into my sanctuary and turned it into a collateral asset. The memories are tainted, Luther. Lucille wouldn't want me living in a crime scene. "I am going to sell it," I continued. "I am going to sell it fast. Cash buyer. And I am going to move to the desert." Lucille always wanted to see the desert. She said the sunsets looked like fire. And Dante Luther asked, "Dante thinks I am a broke old man living in a house he just mortgaged," I said. "So I am going to act like one. I am going to let him think he won. I am going to let him think I am selling the house because I am desperate, because I am senile. I am going to let him drive the truck off the cliff." I walked to the door. "Get the papers ready, Luther. Justice Holdings is open for business." I left the office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. I got into my rusted truck. I looked at my wrist where the watch used to be. The tan line was still there, a ghost of the gold. He wanted the watch. He wanted the time. Well, his time was running out, and the clock was ticking louder than he could ever imagine. 2 days after the humiliation at the lake house, I was sitting in my living room surrounded by boxes. I wasn't moving yet, but I was preparing. I was sorting through 40 years of life, deciding what to keep and what to let go. The air in the house was heavy with memories. Lucille's porcelain figurines, her collection of hymnals, the quilt she had sewn for Dante when he went off to college. I touched the fabric, remembering how proud we were, how full of hope. The doorbell rang. It was a sharp, impatient sound. I looked at the clock. 7 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door, my steps slow and deliberate. I opened it to find Dante and Tiffany standing on my porch. They looked different than they had at the lake. The silk pajamas were gone, replaced by casual clothes that still cost more than my monthly pension. Dante was holding a white bakery box that looked a little crushed on one side. Tiffany was holding a bottle of wine. They were smiling, but it was the kind of smile a shark gives before it bites. "Hey, Dad," Dante said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Sorry we are late. Happy belated birthday." He thrust the box into my hands. It felt light, cheap. I looked at the label. It was from a gas station convenience store. "Day-old pastries. We brought cake," Tiffany chirped, walking past me into the living room, her eyes scanning the space like a real estate appraiser. "And wine. We thought we should celebrate. You know, just family." I closed the door. The lock clicked shut with a sound that felt final. I followed them into the living room. Dante had already flopped onto my recliner, the one I sat in every night to watch the news. He put his feet up on the coffee table right next to a stack of Lucille's old photo albums. "So," Dad Dante said, looking around the room, "what is with all the boxes? You going somewhere?" I put the cake box on the table. I didn't open it. I sat on the sofa, keeping a distance. "Just organizing," I said, letting a tremor seep into my voice. I coughed, a dry, rattling sound I had perfected over the last 24 hours, getting harder to keep up with everything. The dust. It gets to my lungs. Tiffany's eyes lit up. She sat down next to Dante, placing a hand on his knee. "That is exactly what we wanted to talk to you about, Zeke," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We have been so worried about you, living here all alone in this big old house. It is too much for one person, especially at your age." I looked at her. I saw the greed behind the mascara. I saw the calculation. "It is a lot of work," I admitted, playing the part. "The yard, the repairs." "Exactly," Dante said, leaning forward. "Dad, look, we have been thinking. You shouldn't have to worry about mowing the lawn or fixing the roof. You should be relaxing. You should be with family." "With family," I repeated. "You mean with you?" "Yes," Tiffany said, nodding enthusiastically. "We have plenty of room at our place. Well, not plenty, but we have a space. The basement. It is cozy. It is private. You could move in with us. We would take care of you." The basement. They wanted to put me in the basement of the house I was unknowingly paying for, the house where they had partied while I ate cold pancakes. And this house, I asked. What would happen to this house? "Well," Dante said, trying to sound casual, but I could see the sweat on his upper lip. "We would sell it, obviously. The market is hot right now, Dad. We could get a good price. And the money I asked." Dante exchanged a look with Tiffany, a look that said, "Here it comes." "We would invest it for you," Dante said quickly. "I know the market, Dad. I can double it in a year. We would use it to, help with your expenses. And maybe help us out a little bit too. We have some projects we want to do at the lake house." "Projects," I said. "Yeah," Tiffany chimed in. "The boat dock needs to be completely redone. It is rotting. And Bill, my dad, he really wants a pontoon boat. It would be so nice for the family to have a boat. Think about the grandkids, Zeke." I didn't have grandkids, not yet, but she was using them as leverage future hostages in her negotiation for my assets. So I said slowly, letting the words hang in the air, "You want me to sell my house, give you the money, so you can fix a dock for your parents, and I can live in your basement." "Put like that, it sounds bad," Dante said, laughing nervously. "But it is not like that. It is about consolidation. It is about family unity. We want you close, Dad. We want to look after you." "Look after me," I thought. "Like you looked after my watch. Like you looked after my identity." I looked at the cake box. I opened it. Inside was a single stale donut with pink frosting. It looked hard as a rock. "Happy birthday," I whispered. "What was that, Dad?" Dante asked. I said, "It is a lot to think about," I said, raising my voice, making it sound weak and frail. I don't know. I feel so tired lately. Maybe you are right. Maybe I can't manage anymore." Tiffany squeezed Dante's knee again. A victory squeeze. "Of course we are right, Zeke," she said. "It is the only logical solution. You sell the house, we handle the money, you get a nice safe room. Everyone wins. Everyone wins. Except the man who built the house. Except the man whose name was on the deed. I need a few days," I said, rubbing my temples. "To think. To say goodbye to the house." "Take all the time you need, Dad," Dante said, standing up. "But, the market moves fast. We should probably list it next week. I have a friend who is a realtor. He can handle everything. Low commission, family discount. I bet," I thought. "A discount that goes straight into your pocket." I stood up, leaning heavily on the arm of the sofa. My knees popped. It wasn't acting. I was tired. Tired of the lies. "Thank you, son," I said. "Thank you for thinking of me." "We love you, Dad," Dante said. He didn't hug me. He just patted my shoulder like you would pat a dog you didn't want to touch. "We should go," Tiffany said, checking her phone. "We have dinner reservations with my parents. They want to celebrate the new dock plans." "Of course," I said. "Give them my regards." We walked to the door. Dante stopped. He looked at my wrist. It was bare. "Where is your watch, Dad?" he asked. "The Timex. You always wear it." "I lost it." I lied. "I lose things lately. My memory." Dante nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. "See? That is why you need us. You are forgetting things. It is not safe for you to be alone." He opened the door. The evening air was cool. "We will call you tomorrow, Dad," he said. "Get some rest and eat the cake. It is good." They walked to their car. I watched them go. I watched them drive away in the BMW that I was paying for. I closed the door. I locked it. I walked back to the living room. I looked at the donut. I picked it up. It was stale. It crumbled in my hand. I threw it in the trash. I went to my study. I sat at my desk. I pulled out a file folder. It was labeled Justice Holdings. I picked up my phone and called Luther. They took the bait, I said. Good, Luther replied. I bought the note, Zeke. Southern Trust sold it to us this afternoon. We own the mortgage on the lake house. And we own the HELOC debt. We own it all. Excellent, I said. When do you want to drop the hammer, Luther asked. Not yet, I said. He wants me to sell the house. He wants the money for a dock. So I am going to sell the house, I said. What Luther asked, surprised. Zeke, you don't have to do that. We have him. I know, I said, but I want to move. I told you. Arizona. And I want to sell the house on my terms, not his. I am going to list it Luther, but not with his friend. I am going to sell it to a cash buyer, a nice young couple I met at church. They are looking for a starter home. I will give them a deal. And Dante, Luther asked. Dante thinks he is getting the proceeds, I said. He thinks he is getting a check for $300,000. I paused. He is going to get a check, I said, but it won't be for him. What do you mean, Luther asked. I am going to sell the house, I said, and then I am going to disappear. I am going to Arizona, and when he comes looking for the money, he is going to find an empty house and a letter from his new landlord, I said. Justice Holdings, telling him his rent is due. Luther laughed. You are a cold man, Zeke. He brought me a stale donut. Luther, I said, on my 70th birthday. He brought me a stale donut and asked for my house. I hung up the phone. I looked at the picture of Lucille. I am sorry, Lucy, I whispered, but our son needs to learn a lesson, and tuition is expensive. I started packing in earnest. I wasn't just organizing. I was clearing out. I was erasing myself from the house. In 30 days, this house would belong to someone else, someone who would appreciate it, someone who would build a life here, not mortgage it for a dock. And Dante would be waiting for a check that would never come. He would be waiting for a father who was already gone. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for the snap. And while I waited, I had one more party to attend. The housewarming party for the lake house. The party where I would serve the eviction notice, but not on paper, in person. I went to bed. I slept like a baby. The first peaceful sleep I had in days, because I knew that justice was coming. And it was driving a U-Haul to Arizona. The invitation wasn't a request, it was a summons. Dante called me 3 days later, his voice brisk and commanding, the voice of a man who believed he had already won the lottery. Dad, he said, Bill and Susan are throwing an official housewarming party at the lake house on Saturday, a big one. Caterers, a live band, the works. You need to be there. I thought I didn't fit in, I said, testing him. Don't be like that. Dante sighed. Look, Tiffany is stressed. The kids, Bill's grandkids from his first marriage, are coming. They're wild. We need someone to keep an eye on them, make sure they don't break anything expensive, and maybe help pick up a few plates if the staff gets overwhelmed. It's a family contribution, Dad. Since you're selling the house and moving in, it's the least you can do. So that was it. I wasn't a guest. I was the babysitter and the backup janitor. I'll be there, I said. I arrived on Saturday afternoon. The driveway was a sea of luxury cars again, but this time I parked my truck down the street out of sight. I walked up to the house wearing a clean white shirt and black slacks. I looked like a waiter. It was intentional. If they wanted to treat me like the help, I would dress the part. It made the invisibility easier. The party was in full swing. People were spilling out onto the massive deck, laughing, drinking, celebrating a house bought with stolen money. I found Dante near the bar. He was holding court, telling a group of men about his investment strategies. Leverage, I heard him say. It's all about leverage. You use other people's capital to build your own equity. I almost laughed. He was right about the leverage. He just didn't know he was the one being leveraged. Dad, he said when he saw me, his smile tight. Great, you're here. The kids are in the game room. Go make sure they aren't drawing on the walls. I nodded and walked away. I spent the next 2 hours watching 3 spoiled children destroy a $5,000 pool table while their parents ignored them. I picked up discarded napkins. I stacked empty glasses. I became part of the furniture. Around sunset, the real show began. Bill Montgomery, already 3 scotches deep, spotted me clearing a table near the railing. He stumbled over his face, flushed a heavy arm landing on my shoulder like a falling tree branch. He smelled of expensive cologne and cheap arrogance. "Zeke," he boomed, drawing the attention of the nearby guests. "The man of the hour, or should I say the father of the man of the hour." He laughed at his own joke, squeezing my shoulder hard. "Listen, buddy," Bill said, leaning in close, his breath hot on my face. "I gotta thank you. Seriously, you raised a good one, a real, obedient son. He knows his place." "His place?" I asked, my voice neutral. "Yeah," Bill said, gesturing broadly at the house at the lake, at the life he was enjoying. "He knows where the quality lies. He knows which bloodline needs to be prioritized. The Montgomerys? We come from stock Zeke. Old stock. Aristocracy, practically. And your boy? He gets it. He knows that preserving our standard of living is, well, it's a public service. He's upgrading his gene pool by association." He winked, a slow, drunken, conspiratorial wink. "It takes a lot to maintain this level of excellence," Bill continued, lowering his voice. But Dante stepped up. He knew we needed this place. He knew we deserved it. And he facilitated it. Good boy. Real good boy. He patted my cheek. Not a slap, a pat. Like I was a golden retriever who had just fetched his slippers. "You should be proud," Bill slurred. "He's serving his betters well." I stood there, the tray of dirty glasses in my hand. My blood wasn't boiling. It was freezing. It was turning into absolute zero. Serving his betters. That's what they thought. That my son, my flesh and blood, was just a tool to maintain their delusion of grandeur. And the worst part, Dante agreed with them. "I am very proud of him," I said, my voice flat. "He has certainly extended himself." "Damn right he has," Bill laughed, turning back to the party. "Honey, get over here. Tell Zeke what a good job his boy did." Susan Montgomery drifted over. She was holding a glass of red wine, swaying slightly to the music. She looked at me, then at Bill, then at the tray in my hand. "Oh, Zeke," she cooed. "You're such a help. Really. We were just saying how hard it is to find good staff these days." She took a sip of her wine, then her hand slipped. It might have been an accident. It might have been on purpose. The wine sloshed out of the glass, splashing onto the white stone tiles of the deck right next to my shoe. "Oops," Susan giggled. "Oh dear, that's a problem. Red wine stains so badly." She looked at me. She didn't ask for a towel. She pointed at the spill. "Zeke, be a dear," she said. "Clean that up before it sets. You're already holding the tray. Just handle it." "Okay, you're such a good soul. Zeke the Good. That's what we call you. Always there to clean up the mess." She smiled, a sickly sweet expression that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. Then she turned her back on me, linking arms with Bill, and walked away to join the other guests. I looked at the red puddle on the white stone. I looked at their retreating backs. Zeke the Good, the faithful dog, the help. I set the tray down on a side table. I pulled a white cloth napkin from my pocket. I knelt down. I wiped the spill. I wiped it clean. I scrubbed until the stone was white again. As I stood up, I saw it. Through the sliding glass doors on a desk in the corner of the living room, Dante's home office, a stack of papers, was sitting under a paperweight. The wind from the open door ruffled the top page. I recognized the logo. Southern Trust Bank. It was the mortgage document. The one Dante had signed. The one I had instructed Luther to buy. I walked into the living room. No one stopped me. I was invisible. I walked to the desk. I looked at the paper. It was the closing statement. And right there at the top was the name of the lender. Southern Trust. But there was a sticky note attached to it. A bright yellow square with handwriting I recognized. It was Luther's handwriting. It must have been forwarded from the bank during the transition. It read, "File transfer pending, J.H. Acquisition, J.H. Justice Holdings." Dante had left the evidence of his own demise sitting out on a desk during a party, too arrogant or too drunk to notice that his mortgage was being sold to a company he didn't know existed. I picked up the sticky note. I folded it and put it in my pocket. I looked out at the deck. Bill was laughing, cigar smoke billowing around his head. Susan was dancing. Dante was refilling their glasses, smiling like a servant who had been given a pat on the head. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they were the aristocracy. I touched the pocket where the sticky note lay. "Enjoy the wine, Susan. I whispered to the glass. Enjoy the view, Bill, because the landlord is in the building. I walked out of the living room. I walked out of the house. I walked down the driveway, past the Porsche, past the Range Rover. I got into my truck. I didn't feel humiliated anymore. I didn't feel small. I felt like the man who held the demolition permit. They wanted a servant fine. I would serve them. I would serve them an eviction notice they would never forget. I drove away into the night. The party lights faded in the rearview mirror, but the fire in my gut was just getting started. I sat in the high-back leather chair of Luther Vance's office on Monday morning watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight that cut across his mahogany desk. The air smelled of old paper and expensive coffee, a scent that usually signaled the making of fortunes, but today signaled the dismantling of one. Luther sat opposite me, his silver-rimmed glasses perched on the end of his nose, reviewing the file that lay between us like a dead body. It was the loan application my son Dante had submitted to Southern Trust Bank for the lake house. "This is a work of fiction," Zeke Luther grunted, tapping the paper with a manicured finger, "a masterpiece of delusion. He lists his income as $250,000 a year. He claims to be a senior partner at his firm, not a sales manager. And here, look at the assets. He lists your house. He lists your truck. He lists a stock portfolio that I know for a fact belongs to you." I leaned forward and looked at the document. There it was in black and white. My son had not only stolen my money, he had stolen my life story. He had taken the stability I built over 40 years and presented it as his own collateral. He had built a castle on a foundation of lies, and he had invited his in-laws to live in the tower. He lied about everything. I said, my voice low and steady. "He committed federal bank fraud," Luther corrected me, looking over his glasses, "and Southern Trust knows it. Or at least they suspect it. I spoke to their risk officer this morning. They are nervous, Zeke. They see the credit checks hitting his report. They see the maxed-out cards. They see the HELOC withdrawal from First Horizon. They know this loan is radioactive. They are terrified that if they look too closely they will find rot, and they will have to write it off as a total loss. That is why they will sell," I said. "Exactly." Luther nodded. "Banks hate bad debt, but they hate uncertainty even more. If we offer to buy the note for cash right now, they will jump at it. They get their principal back, they clear their books, and they don't have to deal with the foreclosure process. It is a win for them. And for us," I added. "For Justice Holdings," Luther corrected with a shark-like smile. "That is the shell company I set up this morning, registered in Delaware. Anonymous, faceless, terrifying. As far as Dante knows, Justice Holdings is just another faceless hedge fund buying up distressed assets. He won't know it is his father holding the leash until you decide to yank it. Buy it," I said. Luther hesitated. "Zeke, this is going to cost you $650,000. Cash, plus the legal fees. That is a significant chunk of your liquidity. Are you sure you want to do this? You could just report him to the FBI. It is free." I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. I remembered a day 30 years ago. Dante was 8 years old. We were in the garage of the old house on Elm Street. I had just come home from a double shift at the construction site, my boots caked in mud, my back aching like a toothache. Dante was sitting on the floor playing with a plastic truck. I had called him over. I reached into my lunch pail and pulled out an old rusted coffee can. It was heavy. I shook it. The sound of quarters and dimes rattling against the metal was loud and sharp. "Do you know what this is, son?" I had asked him. Money, he had, set his eyes wide. "No, Dante," I had told him, crouching down so I could look him in the eye. "This is discipline. This is every cup of coffee I didn't buy. This is every newspaper I read at the library instead of buying at the stand. This is the seed corn. You never eat the seed corn, Dante. You plant it, you let it grow, and you protect it." He had nodded solemnly, taking the can with both hands like it was a holy relic. "I will protect it, Daddy," he had promised. "I will grow a forest." I blinked the memory away. The boy who promised to grow a forest had grown a swamp instead. He had taken the seed corn and bought champagne for people who wouldn't let me use their front door. He was feeding my sweat to Bill and Susan Montgomery, two parasites who had never done a hard day's work in their lives. They were living in luxury on the lake, drinking vintage scotch and laughing at the gardener while I ate cold pancakes. "Buy it, Luther," I said again, my voice hardening into concrete. "I don't care about the cost. I am not paying for the house. I am paying for the lesson, and tuition is expensive." Luther nodded. He picked up the phone. He dialed the number for the vice president of Southern Trust. I listened as he negotiated. It was a short conversation. The bank was desperate to offload the risk. They didn't even haggle. They agreed to sell the mortgage note and the assignment of rents to Justice Holdings effective immediately. Luther hung up. He typed a few commands into his computer. He spun the screen around. "Transfer initiated," he said. "Once you authorize this, the funds will move from your investment account to the purchase escrow. Within an hour, Justice Holdings will be the legal owner of the debt. You will be the bank Zeke." I reached out and pressed the enter key. It was a small movement, but it felt like dropping a gavel. "It is done," Luther said, sitting back. "Now what?" "Now we let him drown," I said. I stood up and walked over to the credenza, pouring myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. "What is the payment schedule?" I asked. "First of the month," Luther said, checking the file. "That is 5 days from now. The mortgage payment is $3,200. The HELOC interest payment is another $800. He needs to come up with $4,000 by Friday." "He doesn't have it," I said. "He spent his commission on the down payment and the party. He spent the HELOC money on the furniture and the boat dock repairs. He is tapped out." "Then he will default," Luther said. "And when he does," I said, turning to face him, "I want Justice Holdings to be aggressive. I don't want a polite letter. I want a notice of default posted on his door the next morning. I want the acceleration clause invoked. I want the full amount due immediately." "That is ruthless," Zeke, Luther said quietly. "Ruthless." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Ruthless is looking your father in the eye on his 70th birthday and telling him he is an embarrassment. Ruthless is stealing the watch off a man's dresser to wear to a party. Ruthless is mortgaging the house your mother died in to impress people who hate you." I walked back to the desk and picked up the file. I looked at Dante's signature again. The forgery. It was shaky. It was the signature of a coward. "He wants to play the big shot," I said. "He wants to live like the 1%. Well, welcome to the world of high finance, son. In this world, when you don't pay, the shark eats you." "And the Montgomerys?" Luther asked. "What about them? They are living in a house they don't own, enjoying a view they didn't earn," I said. "When the foreclosure starts, they will be named as occupants. They will get an eviction notice, too. I want to see Bill's face when the sheriff tells him to get his Porsche off my property." I put the file down. "Send the notice of transfer to Dante," I instructed. "Let him know his mortgage has been sold. Let him see the name Justice Holdings. Let him wonder who they are. Let him sweat." Luther began drafting the official letter. "You are a patient man, Zeke," he said. "I was a patient man, Luther," I corrected. "Now I am just a creditor, and my terms are non-negotiable." I left the office, stepping out into the heat of the Atlanta afternoon. The city was busy, people rushing to lunch, people working, people building. I walked to my truck parked in the lot. It looked out of place among the luxury sedans, just like I had looked out of place at the lake house. But as I climbed in and started the engine, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt powerful. I held the deed. I held the note. I held the future of my son and his arrogant in-laws in the palm of my calloused hand. I drove home to my empty house. I had packing to do. I had to sell the furniture. I had to clear out 40 years of life. I was moving to Arizona. I was going to the desert. But before I left, I was going to set a fire. And I was going to watch it burn from a distance. Dante thought he had bought a dream house. He didn't know he had just signed a lease in hell. And the landlord had just arrived. 3 days later, Dante came back. He did not bring donuts this time. He brought a clipboard and a measuring tape. He walked through my house like a landlord inspecting a property after an eviction. He tapped the walls. He checked the windows. He frowned at the carpet in the hallway, the same carpet Lucille had picked out 20 years ago because she said the color reminded her of autumn leaves. To Dante, it was just old fiber that needed to be ripped out to increase the resale value. He was moving fast, too fast. The desperation was rolling off him in waves. I could smell it. It smelled like sweat and cheap cologne trying to cover the scent of fear. He told me to get in the car. He said he had a surprise. He said he had found the solution to all our problems. Tiffany was waiting in the passenger seat of the BMW. She didn't look at me when I climbed into the back. She was scrolling on her phone looking at furniture websites. I saw a reflection of a pontoon boat on her screen. She was already spending the money from the house I hadn't sold yet. We drove in silence to their current house. It wasn't the lake house. It was a rented duplex on the edge of the city, a place they complained about constantly but refused to leave because it had a prestige address. They pulled into the driveway. Dante turned off the engine and turned to look at me. His eyes were bright with a manic energy. "You are going to love this, Dad," he said. "We cleared it out just for you. It is private. It is quiet. It is perfect for a man your age who needs tranquility." I followed them inside. The house was cluttered with their things, expensive toys, gadgets, clothes thrown over chairs. It was the chaos of people who bought things to fill a void. They led me through to the kitchen, past the stainless steel appliances I had paid for, past the granite countertops I had installed. We stopped at a narrow door next to the pantry. I knew this door. In most houses it led to a closet or a utility room. Dante opened it. A draft of cold, damp air hit my face. It smelled of mildew and wet earth. It smelled like a grave. "After you," Dad, Dante said, gesturing into the darkness. I stepped onto the landing. A single wooden staircase descended into the gloom. There was no handrail. The wood looked unfinished, rough. I gripped the doorframe, my heart hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I walked down. The stairs creaked under my weight. 1 step. 2 steps. Down into the belly of the house. At the bottom, Dante pulled a string. A single naked light bulb flickered to life in the center of the room. It cast long, harsh shadows against the concrete walls. This was the surprise. This was the solution. It was a basement. But not a finished basement with carpet and drywall. It was a cellar. The floor was raw concrete stained with oil and water. The walls were cinder-block gray and weeping with moisture. There were no windows, not a single pane of glass to let in the sun. In the corner, the furnace hummed and rattled, a mechanical beast that would be my only roommate. There was a cot set up against the far wall, a military-style cot with a thin mattress and a single gray blanket. Next to it was a plastic folding chair and a cardboard box that served as a nightstand. I stood there staring at the cot. I thought about the house I had built for them, the 4 bedrooms, the sunroom, the garden. I thought about the lake house with its floor-to-ceiling windows and its view of the water. And this was my reward. Tiffany walked down the stairs, her heels clicking on the wood. She stood next to Dante, looking around the dungeon with a satisfied smile. "Isn't it cozy?" she asked, her voice echoing off the cold blocks. "It is so private down here, Zeke. You won't be bothered by the noise of the street. And look, plenty of room for your essentials." She gestured to the empty concrete floor as if it were a ballroom. "There are no windows," I said, my voice quiet. "Oh, Zeke, you don't need windows." Tiffany laughed, a light tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "You are old. Your eyes are sensitive. Sunlight just gives you headaches, right? Besides, what do you need to look at? The street. It is just cars. Down here you can just rest. You can sleep as much as you want. It is like a cocoon. A cocoon. Or a coffin." Dante stepped forward, putting a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy. "It is efficient, Dad," he said. "Think about the savings on heating. The earth insulates it. And you will be right downstairs. If you need anything, you just knock on the ceiling with a broomstick. We will hear you." "Probably," he laughed, a nervous, jagged laugh. "And the best part," Tiffany added, stepping closer, her perfume overpowering the smell of mildew, "is that once you are settled here, we can get the sale of your house moving immediately. We already have the papers drawn up, Zeke. We just need you to sign the transfer authorization." I looked at her. In the harsh light of the bulb, she looked predatory. Her eyes were fixed on me, hungry. "Transfer authorization?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "To simplify things. You transfer the title to Dante. He handles the sale. He deals with the realtors, the taxes, the fees. You don't have to worry about a thing. And the proceeds, well, since you will be living here rent-free and we will be taking care of all your meals." She paused, licking her lips. "The money from the sale," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "should go directly into Dante's account. For safekeeping. You know how scammers target the elderly, Zeke. If you have that much cash in your account, someone will try to take it. It is safer with us. We will manage it. We will invest it in the family. Like the dock and the boat. It is all for us. For the legacy." I looked at the cot. I looked at the furnace. I looked at my son. He was nodding along with her. He believed this. He actually believed that stripping his father of his home and shoving him into a windowless cellar was an act of love. Or maybe he just needed to believe it to sleep at night. "We need the routing number, Dad," Dante said, "by Friday. The contractor for the dock needs a deposit, and the realtor says we can list your house on Monday if we sign the papers tonight. So, what do you say? Is this home or what?" I felt a cold rage spreading through my veins, turning my blood to ice. They were standing in a damp hole telling me to give them my life's work so they could buy a boat for people who hated me. They wanted to bury me alive and charge me for the shovel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Dante by the throat and shake him until he remembered who I was. I wanted to tell them about the millions in the bank, the real estate portfolio, the power I held in my hands. But I didn't, because if I screamed now, they would know. They would know I wasn't the weak, senile old man they thought I was. They would know I was a threat, and threats get neutralized. If they knew about the money, they wouldn't put me in the basement. They would put me somewhere I could never leave. I had to play the part. I had to be the sheep. I let my shoulders slump. I let my hands tremble. I coughed that dry, rattling cough that sounded like death knocking at the door. It is very quiet," I stammered, looking at the floor. I suppose you are right. The stairs, they are hard on my knees. But if it helps the family, it helps Dad," Dante said eagerly. "It helps so much. And the money." I continued, my voice wavering. You will take care of it. You promise." I don't understand numbers anymore. The bank statements, they confuse me. "We promise, Zeke," Tiffany said, beaming. "We will take care of every penny. You won't have to lift a finger. Just sign the papers and move in. We can start bringing your boxes over tomorrow." "No," I said quickly. "Not tomorrow." They both frowned. "Why not?" Dante asked, his suspicion flaring. I need time," I said, "to say goodbye. To the house. Your mother's garden. The roses are blooming. I need to prune them one last time. And I need to pack properly. I can't just leave." 30 days, I said, looking up at them, my eyes watering with fake tears. "Give me 30 days. To clear it out. To say goodbye to Lucille's ghost. And then I will sell. I will sign. And I will come here. To the cocoon." Dante looked at Tiffany. She pursed her lips, calculating. 30 days was a long time when you were desperate for cash. "Dad, we really need the money sooner," Dante pressed. "The dock guy." 30 days, Dante," I said firmly, gripping the back of the plastic chair for support. "Or I don't sign. A man needs time to close his life." Tiffany sighed. "Fine. 30 days. But you sign the intent to sell tonight. We need to show the bank, the contractor, that the funds are coming." I nodded. "Okay, I will sign the intent. But the deed, the money, that waits until I move. Until I am here." "Deal," Dante said, holding out his hand. I looked at his hand. It was soft, uncalloused, the hand of a man who had never built anything but expected to own everything. I shook it. His grip was weak. "Deal, son," I said. We walked back up the stairs. The ascent was harder than the descent, not because of my knees, but because of the weight of the betrayal I was carrying. We went to the kitchen. Dante pulled a document out of a drawer. He had it ready. Of course he did. I signed. I made my hand shake. I made the signature look frail, just like the forgery on the loan application. "There," Tiffany said, snatching the paper away. "That wasn't so hard, was it? Now you can relax, Zeke. We have got it from here." I drove home in my truck. The night air rushing through the open window washed away the smell of the basement, but it couldn't wash away the image of that cot. They wanted me in the dark. Fine, I would give them dark. I walked into my house. I went to my study. I called Luther. "Start the clock," I said. They showed me the basement, Luther. No windows. A cot next to the furnace. They want me to live like a rat while they build a dock. I heard Luther inhale sharply on the other end. I promised them 30 days, I said, cutting him off. I told them I would sell the house and give them the money in 30 days. "And in 30 days, Luther asked. "In 30 days I will be in Arizona," I said. "And they will be on the street." I looked at the calendar on my wall. I took a red marker and circled the date 1 month from now. Eviction day. They thought they were waiting for a check. They didn't know they were waiting for the guillotine. I sat back in my chair. I closed my eyes. I could still smell the mildew of that cellar. "You want cozy, Tiffany?" I whispered to the empty room. "I will give you cozy. I will give you a cardboard box under a bridge. Let's see how much light you need then." The game was set. The players were in position. Now all I had to do was wait. And while I waited, I was going to make sure that every single penny of debt they owed me was documented, notarized, and ready to be called in. 30 days. The countdown had begun. The next morning, I walked out to the front lawn with a wooden stake and a heavy mallet. The grass was wet with dew, the same grass I had mowed every Saturday for 30 years. I positioned the sign near the sidewalk right next to the oak tree Lucille and I planted when we moved in. I swung the mallet. Thud, thud, thud. The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood like a gavel striking a bench. The sign was simple. Red and white letters. "For sale by owner, cash offers only." I stepped back and wiped my hands on my jeans. It was done. The bait was in the water. I didn't have to wait long for the shark. Dante must have had an alert set up on his phone for my address, or maybe he was just driving by to make sure I hadn't died before signing the papers. Less than an hour after I planted the sign, his BMW screeched to a halt at the curb. He jumped out, leaving the door open. He wasn't wearing his usual scowl. He was beaming. He looked like a child on Christmas morning if Christmas morning involved evicting his father. "Dad, you did it!" he shouted, running across the lawn. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me slightly. I saw the sign. "It is official. We are really doing this." I pulled away from him, feigning a stagger. I coughed, clutching my chest. "Yes, son," I whispered. "I did it. I just want it to be over. The maintenance. It is too much." Dante looked at the house, his eyes glazing over. He wasn't seeing the brickwork I had pointed myself. He wasn't seeing the porch where I smoked my pipe in the evenings. He was seeing a giant calculator numbers spinning in his head. "This is great, Dad. The market is on fire. We are going to get top dollar. 300,000 easy, maybe 350 if we stage it right. I will call my realtor friend. He can get a photographer out here by noon." "No," I said, raising a trembling hand. "No realtors, no photographers. I don't want strangers tramping through your mother's house with their cameras. I want to handle it myself. Quietly." Dante frowned. "But Dad, exposure is key. We need a bidding war." "We need cash," I said. "You said you needed the money for the dock. Realtors take 6%. That is $18,000, Dante. Do you want to give $18,000 to a stranger, or do you want to put it in the boat fund?" I saw the greed war with the logic in his eyes. Greed won. It always did with him. "You are right," he said, nodding slowly. 6% is a ripoff. Cent is AE. "Okay, sell it yourself. But don't take the first offer. Call me. I will handle the negotiations. You are too soft. People will try to lowball you. I will call you, I promised." Dante reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a glossy brochure. He unfolded it. It was a picture of a car, a McLaren, bright orange, low to the ground. It looked like a spaceship. The price listed at the bottom was more than the value of my house. "Look at this, Dad," he said, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. "I put a deposit down yesterday, non-refundable. The dealer said he would hold it for 30 days. I stared at the picture. A deposit. He didn't have money for rent. He didn't have money for the mortgage he had taken out in my name, but he had found money to put a deposit on a supercar. He was betting everything on the sale of my home. He was counting chickens that weren't even eggs yet. You are buying a race car?" I asked. "It is an investment, Dad," he said quickly. "These things appreciate. And for my business, image is everything. When I pull up in this, clients will know I am serious. They will know the Freeman name means power. The Freeman name used to mean integrity, I thought. Now it means fraud. It is very shiny," I said. "It is the future, Dad. Our future. Once the house sells, I pay off the balance and we are living the dream. You in the basement safe and sound. Me closing deals in a McLaren. It is going to be perfect." He patted my cheek. It was patronizing. It was dismissive. "Get it sold, Dad," he said. "The clock is ticking." He got back in his car and drove away. I watched him go. He was driving toward a cliff, pressing the accelerator to the floor, convinced he could fly. I went back inside. I sat by the window and waited. I wasn't waiting for the highest bidder. I was waiting for the right bidder. I had put the word out at my church, the old AME church on the south side where Lucille and I were married. I told the pastor I was looking for a young couple, hardworking, good people who just needed a break. At 2 o'clock, an old Honda Civic pulled up. It had a dent in the bumper and a baby seat in the back. A young man and woman got out. They were dressed neatly, but their clothes were simple. The man, Marcus, worked 2 jobs as a mechanic. The woman, Sarah, was a nurse. They had a 6-month-old baby girl. I opened the door before they could knock. Mr. Freeman, Marcus asked, holding his hat in his hands. Pastor Jenkins said you might be selling. Come in, I said. I showed them the house. I watched them. They didn't look at the square footage with dollar signs in their eyes. Sarah touched the walls gently. She looked at the kitchen and I saw her picturing her baby in a high chair. Marcus looked at the furnace, checking the maintenance dates. He looked at the foundation. He respected the work. It is beautiful, Sarah said, standing in the living room. It feels warm, like a real home. It is a real home, I said. But, Mr. Freeman, Marcus said, looking uncomfortable. We looked up the comps in this neighborhood. Houses here go for $300,000. We have been saving for 5 years, but we only have $150,000. And the banks, well, interest rates are killing us. We can't afford a mortgage that big. I looked at them. I saw myself 40 years ago. I saw Lucille. I am not asking for $300,000, I said. They looked at me confused. I am asking for $150,000, I said. Cash, as is. But we close in 48 hours. Sarah gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Sir, with all due respect, why is there something wrong with it? Termites, mold. No, I said. The house is solid. I built the extension myself. The reason I am selling it cheap is simple. I want it to go to a family, not a flipper, not an investor, and certainly not to my son. I paused, letting that sink in. My son wants to sell this place to buy a toy car, I told them. He wants to erase my history to buy a future he didn't earn. I would rather give it away to someone who will build a life here than let him have a single cent of profit. Marcus looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at me. She saw the pain in my eyes. She saw the truth. We will take it, Marcus said, his voice shaking. We can have the cashier's check tomorrow. Good, I said. But there is one condition. Anything, Sarah said. Total secrecy, I said. We use my title company, not a local one. We sign the papers here at the kitchen table. And until I hand you the keys, you don't tell a soul. Not the neighbors, not your friends, and especially not anyone who looks like me but drives a BMW. We promise, Marcus said. We signed the papers 2 days later. They brought the check. $150,000. It was half what the house was worth, but it was enough. I handed them the keys. Sarah hugged me. She smelled like vanilla and baby powder. It reminded me of Lucille. Take care of it, I said. We will, she promised. I deposited the check. But not into my regular account. Not into the account Dante knew about. I deposited it into the Justice Holdings operating fund. The money that should have bought his McLaren was now going to be used to buy his eviction. That evening my phone rang. It was Dante. Hey, Dad. Any bites, he asked. I have been looking at the listings, but I don't see it online yet. I have had some interest, I said, keeping my voice vague. A few people looked. They are thinking about it. Thinking, Dante snapped. We don't have time for thinking. The dealer called me today. He has another buyer interested in the McLaren. If I don't come up with the rest of the cash in 3 weeks, I lose the deposit. You need to push them, Dad. Tell them there is a bidding war. There is no bidding war, son, I said. Just people looking. Well, make them look faster, he yelled. Lower the price if you have to. Drop it to $280. We need liquidity. He was telling me to lower the price on the house he didn't own to buy a car he couldn't afford. The irony was delicious. I am trying, Dante, I said. But these things take time. Paperwork, inspections. Skip the inspections, he shouted. Sell it as is. Just get the check. And remember, the check comes to me. Don't deposit it. Don't even look at it. You bring it straight to the basement. The basement. He couldn't even say home. I will bring it to you, I said. When it is ready. Good, he said. Now I have to go. We are picking out the leather for the boat seats. Tiffany wants white. I told her it stains, but you know her. Yes, I said. I know her. I hung up. I looked around the empty living room. My boxes were packed. The movers were coming in the morning to take my things to storage. I had a flight booked to Phoenix for the afternoon. I wasn't going to the basement. I was going to the desert. I walked through the house one last time. I touched the walls. I said goodbye to the ghosts. Dante thought he was waiting for a closing date. He thought he was waiting for a payday. He didn't know that the house was already sold. He didn't know that the money was already in the bank, my bank. He was waiting for a check that would never arrive. And while he waited, he was spending money he didn't have, digging a hole so deep he would never climb out. I turned off the lights. The house went dark. Tomorrow I would be in Arizona. I would be sitting by a pool drinking iced tea. And Dante would be staring at his phone, waiting for a call from a father who had finally stopped answering. The trap was sprung. Now I just had to watch him struggle. And the struggle I knew was going to be spectacular. The air in Scottsdale hit me like a warm towel fresh from the dryer. It was dry, clean, and smelled of sage and heated stone. I stepped off the plane at Sky Harbor International Airport carrying a single leather duffel bag. I didn't look like a man running away from home. I looked like a man finally coming home. I rented a car, a white convertible Mustang, because for 40 years I had driven trucks that smelled of wet dogs and drywall, and I decided that today, under this wide, impossible blue sky, I wanted to feel the wind. I drove north toward the mountains. The landscape changed from city grid to desert sprawl, painted in reds, ochres, and dusty greens. This was Lucille's dream. For the last 10 years of her life, every winter she would rub her swollen knees, look out the window at the gray Georgia rain, and whisper about Arizona. She had a brochure she kept in her Bible. It was wrinkled and soft from being handled so much. It showed a sunset over Camelback Mountain. She used to tap the picture and say, "Zeke, one day we are going to sit right there. We are going to drink iced tea and watch the sun burn the world clean." She never made it. The cancer took her before we could buy the tickets. But as I drove, I felt her in the passenger seat. I felt her hand on my arm. "We made it. Lucy," I whispered to the wind. "We finally made it." My phone buzzed in the cup holder. I glanced at it. It was a text from Dante. "Dad, did you get the dehumidifier for the basement? Tiffany says the moisture might ruin your clothes if you don't run it 24/7. Also, don't forget to wipe your feet before you go down there. New carpet upstairs." I laughed. It was a dark, dry sound that was lost in the wind. He was worried about his carpet. He was worried about my clothes mildewing in the dungeon he had prepared for me. He had no idea that I was currently driving toward a gated community called the Estancia, where the cheapest lot cost more than his entire life's earnings. I didn't reply. I let him think I was busy packing. Let him think I was at the hardware store buying a machine to suck the water out of my grave. I pulled up to the security gate of the resort community. The guard checked my ID against the appointment list. "Mr. Freeman," he said, nodding respectfully. "Ms. Sterling is waiting for you at the model villa." I drove through. The streets were lined with palm trees and cacti that looked like sculptures. The houses were low, sprawling haciendas made of adobe and glass blending perfectly into the desert. It was quiet here. It was the kind of quiet that money buys. I parked in front of a house that looked like it belonged in a movie. It was perched on a ridge overlooking the second hole of the private golf course. A woman was waiting by the front door. She was tall, wearing a sharp suit, holding a tablet. This was Elena Sterling, the premier real estate agent in Scottsdale. I had spoken to her on the phone 3 times. She didn't know who I was, only that I was a cash buyer who didn't like to waste time. "Mr. Freeman?" she said, extending a hand. "Welcome to Arizona." I shook her hand. "The house," I said. "Show me." We walked inside. The front door was heavy, made of iron and mesquite wood. It swung open to reveal a great room with 20-foot ceilings and a wall of glass that framed the mountain range like a painting. The floor was cool travertine stone. The kitchen was a chef's dream with Wolf appliances and an island big enough to land a plane on. "It is fully furnished," Elena said, her heels clicking softly on the stone. 4,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 4 baths, a private casita for guests, and of course the outdoor living space. She slid open the glass wall. It disappeared into the pocket, blurring the line between inside and outside. The patio was massive. There was an infinity pool that seemed to drop off the edge of the world. There was a fire pit. There was an outdoor kitchen. And there was the view. The exact view from Lucille's brochure. I walked to the edge of the pool. I looked out at the valley. I took a deep breath. The air was sweet. "I will take it," I said. Elena blinked. We haven't seen the master suite yet, Mr. Freeman. Or the garage. It has a temperature-controlled garage for 4 cars. I don't need to see them," I said, turning to her. Does it have a humidor? She smiled. A walk-in humidor, sir. Climate-controlled, cedar-lined. It is attached to the wine cellar in the basement. A basement, I repeated. Not a basement like you are thinking, she corrected quickly. It is a lower-level entertainment suite. Theater room, tasting room. It walks out to the lower garden. Show me the humidor, I said. We went downstairs. It wasn't a dungeon. It was a palace underground. The wine cellar was behind a glass wall racks ready for 1,000 bottles. The cigar room was lined with rich, dark wood smelling of cedar and leather. There were 2 heavy armchairs facing a television screen the size of a billboard. I sat in one of the chairs. It was comfortable. It embraced me. Dante wanted to put me on a cot next to a furnace. He wanted me to stare at a cinder block wall. Here I could sit in leather, I could smoke a cohiba, I could drink a glass of 30-year-old scotch and watch the game. This is my room, I said softly. It is a wonderful room, Elena agreed. I pulled out my checkbook, not the one Dante knew about, the one from the private bank in the Cayman Islands where I kept my dividends. What is the damage, Elena? 2.4 million, she said. Turnkey, furniture included. I wrote the check. I didn't hesitate, I didn't flinch. $2.4 million. It was a lot of money, but it was cheaper than the price of my dignity. I handed it to her. I want to close today, I said. I want the keys in my hand before the sun goes down. Elena looked at the check. She looked at me. She saw the work boots. I was still wearing the flannel shirt I hadn't bothered to change. She saw a man who didn't look like $2 million, but she knew a valid check when she saw one. I will make the calls, she said. Welcome home, Mr. Freeman. She went upstairs to make the arrangements. I stayed in the cigar room. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dante. Dad, Tiffany is asking if you can babysit the dogs next weekend while we go to the vineyard. Since you will be living in the basement anyway, it would be easy for you to let them out. Also make sure you don't cook anything smelly down there. The vents connect to the main house. I read the message. I read it twice. Don't cook anything smelly. Babysit the dogs. He was treating me like a servant in a house I hadn't even moved into yet. He was dictating the terms of my imprisonment. I typed a reply. My fingers were steady. Sure, son. I will take care of everything. Just getting the last of the boxes ready. I found a buyer for the house. They are very interested. Cash offer. I hit send. Let him think I was packing. Let him think I was preparing to serve him. I looked around the cedar room. I imagined the rows of wine bottles I would buy. I imagined the quiet evenings. I wasn't going to be babysitting dogs. I was going to be sipping Pinot Noir and watching the sunset. I walked back upstairs. I stood on the patio. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in streaks of violet and fire. Lucille would have loved this, I said aloud. I took out my phone again. I called Luther. I bought the house, I said. Good, Luther replied. And the sale of your old house. The papers are signed, I said. The young couple, Marcus and Sarah, they move in on Monday. I gave them the keys this morning before I left. They promised to keep the curtains drawn until the official transfer date so Dante doesn't snoop. Perfect, Luther said. And Justice Holdings. Ready to strike, I said. Send the letter. Luther. Which letter? The welcome letter. I said, my voice hardening. Send a letter to Dante and Tiffany. Introduce them to their new mortgage holder. Tell them Justice Holdings is delighted to service their debt. And tell them the first payment is due in 48 hours. No grace period. You are enjoying this, Luther noted. I am not enjoying it, I said, watching a hawk circle in the distance. I am correcting a mistake. I raised a boy who thinks the world owes him a living. Now I have to teach a man that the world collects its debts. I hung up. I stood there as the stars came out one by one, pinpricks of light in the desert sky. I was 70 years old. I was alone in a mansion in Arizona. But I wasn't lonely. I had the ghost of my wife. I had my dignity, and I had a front row seat to the justice that was about to rain down on Georgia. Dante thought he was putting me in a hole. He didn't know I had just climbed a mountain, and from up here the view was spectacular. The morning sun streamed through the dusty blinds of my living room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny suspended memories. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands folded over a cup of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. In front of me lay a stack of papers hidden beneath a copy of yesterday's newspaper. They were documents Luther had drawn up, precise, lethal, and binding. They were not the papers my son was bringing. They were the trap door. I heard the roar of the BMW before I saw it. Dante drove like he lived fast, loud, and without regard for anyone else on the road. He pulled into the driveway, not parking, just abandoning the car at an angle that blocked the sidewalk. He walked up the path, clutching a leather portfolio under his arm. He looked impatient. He looked like a man who had already spent the commission he hadn't earned yet. He didn't knock. He used the key I had given him 10 years ago, the key he had used to steal my watch, the key he had used to steal my identity. The door swung open and he breezed in, bringing a gust of wind and the scent of expensive cologne that tried too hard to mask the smell of anxiety. "Morning, Dad," he said, tossing his keys on the counter. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask if I had eaten. He went straight to the table, clearing a space by shoving my Bible and my reading glasses to the side. "We need to get this done," he said, opening the leather portfolio. "The realtor called. He has a cash buyer lined up, but we need to move fast. If we don't get the title transfer authorized today, we lose the window. The market is cooling, Dad. We have to strike while the iron is hot." I watched him spread the documents out. They were thick, heavy bond paper. At the top of the first page in bold letters it read, "Power of attorney, real estate and financial assets." It wasn't a sale agreement, it was a surrender. It was a document that would give him total unchecked control over everything I owned. My house, my bank accounts, my life. If I signed this, he wouldn't just sell the house. He would drain me dry before the ink was wet. He uncapped a heavy fountain pen. It looked expensive, probably bought with the money from the HELOC loan he stole from me. "Just sign right here," he said, tapping the bottom of the page. "And here. And initial here. It is just standard stuff. It authorizes me to handle the closing so you don't have to stress about the details. You know how confusing the legal jargon gets. I am doing this to protect you. Protect me." The wolf was telling the sheep he was building a fence for its own good. I reached for the pen, letting my hand tremble. I brought the tip down to the paper, then stopped. I lifted my head and looked at him. "I need water," I said, my voice scratching like sandpaper. "My throat, it is dry." Dante rolled his eyes. He let out a heavy sigh, the sound of a man burdened by the existence of others. "Fine," he snapped. "I will get it. But hurry up. I have a lunch meeting with the dock contractor." He turned his back to me and walked to the sink. He grabbed a glass from the drying rack. He turned on the tap. That was all the time I needed. My hand moved. It didn't tremble. It moved with the speed and precision of a man who used to catch falling hammers on a construction site. I slid his stack of papers to the left under the newspaper. In the same motion, I slid my stack of papers out from under the placemat. I aligned them perfectly in front of the chair. The swap took 3 seconds. When Dante turned back around holding the glass of water, the document on the table looked identical. Same font, same heavy paper, same layout. But the words were different. This document wasn't a power of attorney. It was an acknowledgement of debt and repayment agreement. It stated in clear legal English that Dante Freeman acknowledged a debt of $150,000 to Isaiah Freeman. It stated that the debt was accrued through an unauthorized withdrawal from a home equity line of credit. It stated that he agreed to repay the full amount plus 6% interest within 90 days or forfeit his personal assets. He set the water down. He didn't look at the paper. He looked at his watch. "Drink up," he said, "and sign." I took a sip of the water. I looked at the document. I looked at the line where he wanted me to sign. On my version, that line was for the lender. I signed. "Isaiah Freeman. Now you," I said, sliding the paper toward him. "Me?" he asked, frowning. "Why do I have to sign?" I coughed again, covering my mouth with a napkin to hide the slight smile that wanted to break through. "The realtor. He said there needs to be a witness," I lied. "Someone to verify that I am of sound mind. And since you are handling the money, you need to sign as the custodian." Dante laughed. It was a dismissive sound. "Custodian. Yeah, that sounds right. I am the custodian of the future Dad." He didn't read it. He didn't even glance at the title of the document. He was so blinded by his own arrogance, so convinced of my stupidity, that he didn't think it was necessary to check if the trap had teeth. He grabbed the pen. He signed his name with a flourish. Dante Freeman. He signed right next to the word borrower. And then, just to be sure, I turned the page. "An initial here," I said. "For the bank routing." He initialed. He initialed the clause that admitted to the fraud. He initialed the clause that accepted personal liability. He signed his confession. There he said, capping the pen and snapping the portfolio shut. "Done. You see, that wasn't so hard. Now I can handle everything. You just focus on packing. Remember 30 days. The basement is ready. Tiffany bought a dehumidifier. It is going to be great." He picked up the folder. He was holding his own death warrant and he thought it was a winning lottery ticket. "I will get copies made and bring them back later," he said, walking to the door. "No," I said. He stopped. "What?" "Leave that one here," I said. I want to put it in my Bible, for safekeeping, until the sale closes." Dante hesitated. He looked at the folder. He wanted to take it. He wanted to run to the bank. But he didn't want to spook me. He thought he had won. He thought the house was his. "What was one piece of paper?" "Fine," he said, pulling the signed document out and tossing it onto the table. "Keep it. I will just tell the title company I have your verbal authorization to proceed until I bring the original. But don't lose it, Dad. That paper is worth 300 grand. "No, son," I thought. "That paper is worth your freedom." He walked out the door. He didn't say goodbye. He just got in his BMW and sped away, leaving tire marks on the street. I sat there for a long time. I listened to the silence of the house. I looked at the document. I looked at his signature. It was bold. Loops and sharp angles. The signature of a man who thought he was untouchable. I picked up the phone and called Luther. "He signed," I said. "He signed the confession," Luther asked, his voice incredulous. "He didn't read it. He didn't read a word," I said. "He thinks it is the power of attorney. He thinks he just took control of my estate." Luther let out a low whistle. "That is cold, Zeke. You just got him to sign a confession to a federal crime and a repayment plan for a debt he can't afford. He stole my house, Luther," I said, my voice hardening. "He stole my name. He signed for me when I wasn't looking. Now I just returned the favor." "So what now?" Luther asked. "Now," I said, standing up. "Now I finished packing. I folded the document carefully. I didn't put it in my Bible. I put it in the file marked Justice Holdings. I walked through the house. I looked at the walls. They were bare now. The pictures were down. The life I had built with Lucille was packed into cardboard boxes ready for the movers. I wasn't sad. I was focused. I had one more thing to do before I left for Arizona. I had to sell the house. But I wasn't selling it to Dante, and I wasn't selling it for the price he wanted. I heard a car pull up outside. It wasn't Dante. It was the young couple from the church, Marcus and Sarah. They were early. They looked nervous. They looked hopeful. I opened the door. "Mr. Freeman," Marcus said, holding a certified bank check in his hands. "We have the money. 150,000. "Come in," I said. We sat at the same table where Dante had just signed his life away. I put the deed on the table. The real deed. This house, I told them, was built on love. It raised a family. It saw good times and bad times, but the foundation is strong. Sarah touched the table. "We will take care of it, Mr. Freeman. We promise." "I know you will," I said. I signed the deed. I handed them the keys. "It is yours," I said. "But remember the condition." "We know," Marcus said. Silence. "We don't move in for 3 days. We keep the curtains drawn. And if a man named Dante comes by, you tell him the owner is gone." I finished. "You tell him the house was sold. And you tell him to check his mail." They nodded. They didn't understand the game, but they respected the rules. They were good people. They deserved the break. I watched them leave. They walked hand in hand, looking at the house like it was a palace. I picked up my suitcase. It was the only thing left. I walked out the front door. I locked it one last time. I dropped the key through the mail slot. I walked to my truck. I looked back at the house. It looked small. It looked empty. But it didn't look sad. It looked like it was waiting for new laughter. I got in the truck. I drove to the airport. I left my truck in the long-term parking lot. I wouldn't need it in Scottsdale. I walked into the terminal. I checked in for my flight. One way, first class. As I sat in the lounge sipping a ginger ale, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dante. "Hey, Dad just ordered the materials for the dock. Contractor starts Monday. Thanks for being reasonable. You won't regret this." I looked at the message. I didn't reply. I deleted it. He thought the contractor was starting on Monday. He didn't know that on Monday his world was going to end. I boarded the plane. I watched Atlanta disappear beneath the clouds. I was leaving behind the humidity, the memories, and the sun who had forgotten me. I was going to the desert. I was going to the heat. I was going to clean the slate. And in my briefcase next to my passport was the paper that proved my son owed me $150,000. The trap was set. The mouse had taken the cheese. Now all I had to do was wait for the snap. 30 days. I had given him 30 days. And true to his nature, Dante waited until the very last hour of the very last day to show up. I was sitting on my patio in Scottsdale, a glass of iced tea, sweating in the desert heat, watching the security feed on my tablet. It was a Saturday morning in Georgia. The sky was gray heavy with the threat of rain, the kind of humidity that makes your clothes stick to your skin. A large white rental truck rumbled down the street. It was the smallest size U-Haul available. Dante hadn't rented a moving crew. He hadn't rented a team to pack my things with care. He had rented a box on wheels and brought his wife. They were planning to throw my life into the back of that truck like I was debris from a demolition site. Dante parked the truck on the lawn. He didn't care about the grass anymore. In his mind, the house was already sold, the check was already cashed, and the landscaping was someone else's problem. He jumped out of the cab. He was wearing gloves and old jeans, dressed for the dirty work of moving his father into a hole in the ground. Tiffany stayed in the passenger seat for a long moment, probably checking her makeup before stepping out. She looked disgusted to even be there. I turned up the volume on the tablet. I wanted to hear every word. "Let's get this over with," Dante muttered, walking up the path. "I have the contractor coming to the lake house at 2. We need to be done by noon." He didn't knock. He used his key. He shoved the door open and marched inside, shouting my name before he even crossed the threshold. "Dad, we are here. Get your stuff ready." He stopped. The echo of his voice bounced off the walls. It was a hollow, lonely sound. He walked into the living room. He stopped again. It was empty. I had sold everything. The furniture, the rugs, the curtains. I had called an estate liquidator 3 days after I left. They had come in and cleared the place out. The only thing left was the smell of floor wax and the ghost of 40 years of living. The walls were bare, the nail holes filled and painted over. The floors were swept clean. It looked like a house that had never been lived in. "What the hell?" Dante whispered. Tiffany walked in behind him, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood. "Where is his junk?" she asked, looking around. "I thought we were going to have to rent a dumpster. Did he throw it all out?" Dante walked to the kitchen. Empty. He walked to the bedrooms. Empty. He came back to the living room, a look of confusion warring with relief on his face. "He must have done it himself," Dante said, scratching his head. "He actually listened to me. He got rid of everything. That saves us hours." "See," Tiffany said, smiling. "I told you he knew his place. He probably packed a suitcase and is sitting in the backyard waiting for us. Go check the back." Dante walked to the sliding glass door. He looked out into the yard. It was empty. The grass was cut. The garden was weeded, but there was no old man sitting on a bench. There was no suitcase. "He is not there," Dante said, turning back. "Maybe he is in the bathroom," Tiffany suggested. "Maybe he fell." Dante checked the bathroom. Nothing. "This is weird," Dante said, pulling out his phone. "I am calling him." He dialed my number. In Arizona, my phone buzzed on the table. I watched him on the screen. He waited. He frowned. He hung up. "Straight to voicemail," he said. Just then a car pulled into the driveway. It was the Honda Civic with the dented bumper. Marcus and Sarah. They were right on time. They got out of the car holding hands. Sarah was carrying a tape measure. Marcus was carrying a toolbox. They walked up the path, looking at the house with pride. It was their house now. Dante saw them through the open front door. He bristled. He walked to the threshold, blocking their way. "Can I help you?" Dante asked, his voice sharp. He assumed they were lost. Or maybe he thought they were scavengers looking for scrap metal. Marcus stopped. He looked at Dante. He saw the rental truck. He saw the aggressive stance. He didn't back down. "We are here to measure for the nursery," Marcus said politely. "Who are you? Who am I?" Dante laughed a short, incredulous bark. "I am Dante Freeman. I am the owner's son, and I am in the middle of moving him out. This is private property. You need to leave." Sarah stepped forward. She looked confused. "Moving him out?" she asked. "Mr. Freeman moved out 3 days ago." Dante froze. He looked at Sarah. He looked at Marcus. "What do you mean he moved out?" Dante asked slowly. "Where did he go?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "He just gave us the keys and said the house was ours." Dante's face went slack. He stared at the keys in Marcus's hand. They were my keys. The brass key for the front door. The silver key for the garage. "He gave you the keys," Dante whispered. "Why would he give you the keys?" "Because we bought the house," Sarah said, her voice cheerful. "We closed yesterday. Mr. Freeman said we could come by this morning to start planning the painting." Dante looked like he had been punched in the stomach. He staggered back a step, gripping the doorframe for support. You bought the house, he stammered. That is impossible. I am handling the sale. I have the power of attorney. I have the realtor. It isn't even listed yet. We didn't use a realtor, Marcus said, stepping past Dante into the living room. It was a private sale. Cash. Mr. Freeman gave us a great deal. Cash. The word hit Dante like a bullet. His eyes went wide. His breathing became shallow and fast. He looked at Tiffany. She was standing in the middle of the empty room, her mouth hanging open. Cash. Tiffany shrieked. You paid cash. How much? Who did you give it to? We gave it to Mr. Freeman, Sarah said, looking at Tiffany like she was crazy. It was a cashier's check. Handed it to him right at this kitchen table. Dante lunged at Marcus. He grabbed the young man by the shoulders. Where is the money? Dante screamed, shaking him. Where is the check? Did he give it to you to hold? Did he leave it here? Marcus shoved Dante off him. He was a mechanic. He had strong arms. Dante stumbled back, tripping over his own feet. Hey, watch it, Marcus warned, stepping in front of Sarah. I don't know what your problem is, man, but the money is gone. Mr. Freeman took it. He put it in his pocket and drove away. He drove away, Dante gasped, scrambling to his feet. Where did he go? He didn't say, Marcus said. He just said he was going somewhere warm, said he was done with the cold. Arizona. I took a sip of my tea. I could almost hear the gears grinding in Dante's head. He was doing the math. He realized the house was sold. He realized the money, the $300,000 he thought was his, was in my pocket. And he realized he didn't know where I was. He ran to the kitchen. He started opening drawers, slamming them shut. He was looking for a note. He was looking for a check stub. He was looking for anything that would tell him where his inheritance had gone. Empty. 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 Dad, he screamed at the ceiling. Dad, pick up the phone. Tiffany was hyperventilating. Dante, the doc, she yelled. The contractor starts Monday. We gave him a deposit check that is going to bounce if we don't transfer the funds. And the car! You put $5,000 down on that McLaren. If we don't pay the balance... I don't care about the car, Dante roared, spinning on her. Where is my father? Where is the money? He turned back to Marcus. You have to undo it, Dante demanded. The sale is void. My father... He is not competent. He is senile. He didn't know what he was doing. You took advantage of an old man. I am going to sue you. Marcus crossed his arms. He looked at Dante with pity. He didn't look senile to me, Marcus said. He looked pretty sharp. He read every line of that contract. And he told us something about you. Dante stopped. What? What did he say? He said you would say that, Marcus replied. He said you would come here and claim he was crazy. He said you would threaten to sue. He said to tell you... Marcus reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a sealed envelope. He said to give you this. Dante snatched the envelope. He tore it open with trembling fingers. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. I knew what it said. I had written it the night before I left. It wasn't a check. It wasn't an apology. It was a copy of the document he had signed 3 days ago. The acknowledgement of debt. Dante looked at it. He read the bold letters at the top. He saw his signature next to the word borrower. He saw my signature next to the word lender. And then he saw the handwritten note I had scrawled at the bottom in red ink. House sold. Proceeds deposited. Your debt of $150,000 is now due in full. Payment expected in 30 days. No grace period. Justice Holdings. Dante stared at the paper. His face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of gray and green. He looked like he was going to be sick. Justice Holdings, he whispered. Who is Justice Holdings? Tiffany grabbed the paper. She read it. She looked at Dante. You signed this, she screamed. You signed a debt acknowledgement. You told me it was a power of attorney. I didn't read it, Dante stammered. He tricked me. He swapped the papers. He tricked you, Tiffany yelled, hitting him on the arm with her purse. You idiot. You owe him $150,000, and he took the house money. Dante looked around the empty room. He looked at the walls that used to hold his childhood. He looked at the spot where he had tried to force me into a basement. He didn't just take the money, Dante whispered, the horror dawning on him. He took everything. Marcus stepped forward. If you are done screaming, Marcus said calmly, I am going to have to ask you to leave. This is my house now, and I have measuring to do. Dante looked at Marcus. He looked at the keys in his hand. He realized he was trespassing. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He simply deflated. He walked out of the house, his boots dragging on the floor. He walked past the U-Haul that was empty and would remain empty. He stood on the sidewalk. He looked at his phone. He dialed my number again, and again, and again. I watched the screen of my phone light up. Dante calling, Dante calling, Dante calling. I didn't answer. I let it ring. I took another sip of tea. The desert sun was warm on my face. He was looking for his father, but his father wasn't there. His creditor was watching, and the first payment was due. I sat by the infinity pool, the water shimmering like a sapphire under the relentless Arizona sun. A glass of iced lemonade garnished with a slice of fresh lime sweated on the teak table beside me. I wasn't used to this yet. The silence, the space, the feeling of not having to look over my shoulder to see if someone was trying to steal my wallet. It was peaceful, but it was a peace bought with fire. I adjusted my sunglasses and looked out at the desert. The cacti stood tall and defiant survivors in a harsh landscape. I felt a kinship with them. My phone, which had been resting face down on the table, began to vibrate. It was a persistent, angry buzz that rattled against the wood. I knew who it was. I didn't need to look at the screen. The 30 days were up. The house was empty. The check was missing. I picked up the phone. Dante. I let it ring 3 times, 4 times. Let him sweat. Let him imagine the worst. Let him picture me dead in a ditch or lost in a nursing home. Then, just before it went to voicemail, I answered. "Hello?" I said, my voice calm, devoid of the frailty I had feigned for weeks. Dad Dante screamed. The sound was distorted, raw with panic. "Dad, where are you?" "I am at the house. It is empty. The furniture is gone. There are strangers here measuring for curtains. Where is the money? Where is the check?" I took a sip of my lemonade. The ice clinked softly against the glass. "Hello, Dante," I said. "I assume you met Marcus and Sarah? Nice couple, aren't they? They remind me of your mother and me when we were starting out. Full of hope, not full of greed." "What are you talking about?" Dante yelled. "Who are they? Why do they have keys? Where is the $300,000? "Tiffany is freaking out, Dad. The contractor is at the lake house right now waiting for a deposit." "You promised?" "I promised to sell the house," I corrected him. "And I did. But the money," he shrieked. "You said I would handle the money. You signed the paper." "I signed a paper, yes," I said. "But maybe you should have read it, son. Details matter." "Dad, stop playing games. Where are you?" "Are you at the motel? I am coming to get you. We need to go to the bank right now. I am not at a motel." "Dante," I said, leaning back in my lounge chair, "I am home." "Home? What home?" "You sold the house. I bought a new one." I said, "A new one." He repeated, his voice dropping confusion, warring with his anger. "What do you mean, a new one? You don't have any money. You are broke. You needed us to take you in. You were going to live in the basement." I laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It was a laugh of genuine amusement. "The basement," I said. "Yes. The cozy little dungeon without windows." I thought about it, Dante. I really did. But then I decided that at my age I need a little more light and a little less moisture. So I used the proceeds from the sale to upgrade. Upgrade. To what? An apartment. A trailer. "Dad, whatever you bought, you have to return it. We need that cash. The loan. The HELOC. The HELOC you took out in my name," I asked, my voice sharpening. "The one you used to buy a lake house for people who call me the gardener." There was a silence on the line, a heavy, suffocating silence. He realized I knew. "Dad, I can explain," he stammered. "It was an investment. For the family." "It was theft, Dante," I said. "Plain and simple. You stole from me. You forged my signature. You mortgaged my memories to buy your pride." But we were going to pay it back," he cried, "with the sale of the house." "That was the plan." "That was your plan," I said. "My plan was different. My plan was to see if my son had any honor left." "Dad, please," he begged. "If I don't get that money, I am ruined. The bank will foreclose. The car, the boat dock. Tiffany. She will leave me. Then she leaves you, I said coldly. If she only loves you for the money you steal from your father, she is not a wife. She is an accomplice. Where are you? He demanded, again his voice rising in hysteria. I am coming to find you. You can't hide from me. I am in Scottsdale, Arizona, I said. Arizona. Why Arizona? Because your mother always wanted to see the sunset here, I said, looking out at the red mountains. And because it is 2,000 miles away from you. You spent the money, he whispered. All of it. Every penny. I lied. Well, not every penny. I used the house money for the down payment, but don't worry about the rest. I have resources. Resources. What resources? You are a retired construction worker. I was a foreman, Dante, I said. And I was a saver. I saved every dollar you wasted. I invested every dime you threw away on clothes and cars. I built a fortune while you were building a facade. You have money, he asked, his voice trembling with betrayal. You had money this whole time, and you let us struggle. You let us live in that duplex. You let me worry about rent. I let you live, I said. I let you find your own way. I wanted you to be a man, Dante, not a leech, but you chose the easy way. You chose to steal, and now you have to pay the bill. Dad, you have to help me, he sobbed. Just this once. Send me the money. I will pay you back, I swear. I will work. I will do anything. You already owe me, I said. You signed the paper, remember? The one you thought was a power of attorney, that was a confession, son. That was a promissory note. You owe me $150,000, plus interest, he gasped. You tricked me. I taught you a lesson, I said. Read before you sign. Dad, please. Goodbye, Dante, I said. Dad. Wait, don't hang up. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I looked at the screen. I pressed the red button. The silence of the desert returned. I took a deep breath. The air was hot and dry. It felt clean. I took another sip of my lemonade. It was tart and sweet. He was panicking. He was terrified. Good. Fear was a powerful teacher. He had never been afraid before. He had always had a safety net. He had always had me. Now the net was gone, and he was falling. I stood up and walked to the edge of the pool. I looked at my reflection in the water. I looked older than I felt, but my eyes were clear. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the judge, and the sentence had just begun. My phone buzzed again. Dante. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Tiffany. I ignored it. It buzzed a third time. A text message. Dad, please. We are family. I deleted it. Family doesn't put you in a basement. Family doesn't steal your watch. Family doesn't call you the gardener. I walked back into the house. It was cool and dark inside. I went to the humidor. I selected a cigar. I cut the tip. I lit it. I watched the smoke curl up toward the ceiling fan. This was my house, my rules, and Dante was just a bad tenant in a life he couldn't afford. I sat in the leather chair. I picked up a book. I started to read. Let him call. Let him scream. Let him cry. I had 40 years of silence to make up for, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. While I was sipping lemonade in the dry heat of Arizona, watching the sunset paint the mountains red 3,000 miles away, a very different kind of heat was rising. It was the heat of a fire I had lit days ago, a slow-burning fuse that had finally reached the powder keg. The location was the pristine deck of the lake house on Lake Lanier. The time was exactly noon. Bill and Susan Montgomery were living the life they believed they were entitled to. Bill was wearing white linen pants and a pastel polo shirt, sitting in an Adirondack chair that faced the water. He had a glass of scotch in one hand and a cigar in the other. Susan was flipping through a catalog of high-end patio furniture, circling items with a gold pen. They looked like royalty. They looked like people who had never worried about a bill in their lives because they had always found someone else to pay it. They were discussing the boat dock. Dante had promised them a contractor was starting on Monday. They were already arguing about whether the boat lift should be hydraulic or electric. They were spending my son's imaginary money with a gluttonous efficiency. Then the mail carrier arrived. It wasn't the regular mail truck. It was a private courier in a gray sedan. He walked up the long stone driveway carrying a single thick envelope. It was red. Not a friendly holiday red, but a warning red. It required a signature. Bill signed for it, annoyed at the interruption. He looked at the return address. Justice Holdings, Wilmington, Delaware. He frowned. He didn't know anyone in Delaware. He didn't know anyone named Justice. He tore open the tab. He pulled out a stack of stiff legal documents. He started to read. I wasn't there, but I know exactly what happened next. I know because Luther had drafted the letter himself, and Luther had a way with words that could stop a man's heart from across the country. The first page was a notice of assignment. It stated in dry legal language that the mortgage note for the property at 124 Lakeview Drive, originally held by Southern Trust Bank, had been sold and assigned to a private equity firm named Justice Holdings. Bill probably shrugged. Mortgages get sold all the time. It happens. It is just paperwork. But then he turned the page. The second document was titled, Notice of Default and Acceleration. Bill's eyes must have narrowed. He read the first paragraph. Then he read it again. His face likely turned the color of the brickwork. The cigar fell from his fingers, landing on the expensive teak deck and smoldering there forgotten. Susan looked up. Bill, what is it? She asked. Is it the club membership? Bill didn't answer. He was paralyzed. He was reading a clause that detailed the reason for the default. It wasn't missed payments. Not yet. It was something far worse. Material misrepresentation of financial status. The letter outlined in brutal detail that the borrower Dante Freeman had falsified his income on the loan application. It stated that an independent audit conducted by the new note holder, Justice Holdings, had revealed that Mr. Freeman did not earn $250,000 a year as stated under penalty of perjury. It stated that his debt-to-income ratio was in violation of federal lending standards. And then came the hammer. Due to this breach of contract, the letter read, Justice Holdings is exercising its right to accelerate the loan. The full principal balance of $650,000 plus accrued interest and legal fees is due and payable immediately. You have 30 days to remit the full amount via certified wire transfer. Failure to pay will result in immediate foreclosure proceedings and eviction of all occupants. 30 days, $650,000. Eviction. Bill dropped the letter. It fluttered to the deck. Susan picked it up. She read it. She screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of outrage. It was the sound of a parasite realizing the host was dying. Eviction, she shrieked. Bill, do something. This has to be a mistake. Dante said he handled everything. He said he was a partner at the firm. He said he had money. Bill stood up. He was shaking. His free ride was over. His retirement plan was burning down. He grabbed his phone. He dialed Dante's number. Dante was sitting in his car outside my empty house. He was still reeling from the shock of finding me gone. He was staring at the acknowledgement of debt he had signed, trying to figure out how he owed his father $150,000. He was trying to figure out how to tell Tiffany that the money for the dock didn't exist. His phone rang. He saw the caller ID, Bill. He probably thought it was a thank you call. Maybe they wanted to ask about dinner. He cleared his throat, trying to sound like the successful executive he pretended to be. Hey, Bill, Dante answered, forcing a cheerful tone. How is the lake today? There was no greeting. There was just a roar. Who the hell is Justice Holdings? Bill screamed. Dante flinched, pulling the phone away from his ear. What? Who? Don't play dumb with me, boy, Bill shouted. I am holding a letter that says you lied. It says you committed fraud. It says we have 30 days to get out of this house or the sheriff is coming to throw us onto the street. Dante felt the blood drain from his face. Justice Holdings. He had seen that name before. It was on the paper Marcus had given him. It was on the paper he had signed. The debt acknowledgement. Justice Holdings was me. Bill, I don't know what you are talking about. Dante stammered, his mind spinning. I paid the mortgage. It is current. They bought the note, you idiot, Bill yelled. They bought the debt, and they are calling it in. They say you lied about your income. Did you lie, Dante? Did you tell the bank you made $250,000 when you are just a salesman? Dante couldn't breathe. The walls of his car felt like they were closing in. I embellished a little. Dante whispered. Everyone does it. It is standard practice. It is fraud, Bill roared. And now they want the full amount, $650,000, in 30 days. Do you have $650,000, Dante? Because if you don't, Susan and I are homeless. Dante looked at the empty house in front of him. He looked at the sold sign that didn't exist because I had sold it privately. He realized he had zero assets. I can fix this, Dante said, his voice cracking. I will call them. I will explain. You will fix nothing, Bill spat. You are a liar. You told us you were a success. You told us you were taking care of us. You are nothing but a fraud. You dragged us into this mess. You embarrassed us. Susan grabbed the phone from Bill. I could hear her shrill voice piercing the speaker. Dante Freeman, she hissed. I am looking at my grand piano. I am looking at the curtains I just ordered. Are you telling me I have to pack them? Are you telling me I have to leave my lake house because you are too incompetent to fill out a loan application correctly? It is not incompetence, Susan Dante pleaded. It is complicated. My father, he is behind this. He tricked me. Your father, Susan laughed a harsh, cruel sound. Your father, the gardener. The man you wouldn't let use the front door. You are blaming him. He is a broke old man, Dante. You told us that. How could a broke old man buy a $600,000 mortgage? Dante froze. She was right. How could I? Unless I wasn't broke. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The pieces started to fit together. The missing watch, the sudden sale of the house, the mysterious Justice Holdings, the calmness in my voice. He isn't broke, Dante whispered. What? Susan snapped. He isn't broke, Dante said louder, his voice rising in hysteria. He has money. He has real money. He bought the debt. He is doing this to me. Susan didn't care about the details. She only cared about the result. I don't care who has money, she said. I care that I have an eviction notice in my hand. Fix it, Dante. Or don't bother coming home to Tiffany. Because when I tell her that her husband is a fraud who is getting her parents kicked onto the street, she is not going to want to see you. She hung up. Dante sat in his car. The silence was deafening. He looked at the paper in his hand again. The handwritten note from me. Your debt is due. He looked at his phone. He looked at the empty house. He realized he was surrounded. I was in Arizona. The bank was in Delaware. His in-laws were at the lake. And he was in the middle holding a bag of lies that had just ripped open. He started the car. He didn't go to the lake house. He didn't go to his apartment. He went to the only place he thought had money left. He went to the bank. First Horizon. He still had my debit card. The one he had stolen from my wallet months ago and kept just in case. He knew the PIN because I had foolishly used his birthday years ago. He thought he could pull out $500, maybe $1,000, enough to buy some time, enough to buy a lawyer. He drove like a maniac, speeding through the suburban streets. He didn't know that I had already been to First Horizon. He didn't know that the fraud alert was already active. He didn't know that the moment he put that card in the machine, he wasn't withdrawing cash. He was withdrawing a police escort. But that was a lesson for the next hour. Right now, he was just a desperate man driving a leased car he couldn't afford, trying to outrun a shadow that was already standing in front of him. I took another sip of my tea in Arizona. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the desert in shades of purple and gold. My phone didn't ring. I knew why. He was busy. He was running. Run, Dante, I whispered. Run as fast as you can. But you can't outrun the ink on the page. And you certainly can't outrun justice. Dante drove like a man fleeing a crime scene because in many ways he was. He peeled out of my driveway, leaving tire marks on the asphalt that I would have to pay someone to clean later. He didn't look back at the house. He didn't look back at the young couple who now owned his childhood home. He only looked at the road ahead and the terrifying math equation burning a hole in his mind. He was negative. He was underwater. He had debts due in 48 hours that exceeded his annual salary, and his primary source of income, me, had just vanished into the Arizona sunset. But Dante was a survivor in his own mind. He was a hustler, and hustlers always have an angle. As he wove through traffic, cutting off a school bus and running a red light, his panic began to calcify into a desperate plan. He remembered the card. The blue debit card from First Horizon Bank. It was in the center console, buried under empty Starbucks cups and gum wrappers. It was the card linked to the home equity line of credit, the HELOC. He knew he had forged my signature to get it. He knew the initial draw of $150,000 was gone, spent on the lake house down payment. But he also knew the credit limit was $200,000. That meant there was $50,000 of available credit sitting there. $50,000. It wasn't enough to pay off the mortgage, but it was enough to run. It was enough to buy a plane ticket. It was enough to disappear until he could figure out a new lie to tell Tiffany. He reached the bank at 1:12 in the afternoon. He didn't park in a spot. He pulled up right to the curb in the fire lane, leaving the engine running. He didn't care about tickets. Tickets were a problem for people who planned to stay in town. He jumped out of the car, clutching the plastic card like it was a holy relic. He ran to the ATM in the vestibule. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped the card twice before he managed to shove it into the slot. "Please," he whispered. "Please, just work. Just one more time." He punched in the PIN. "My birthday." He selected withdrawal. He hit the button for maximum daily limit. $800. He needed cash. He needed gas money. He needed to buy a burner phone because he knew his service was about to be cut off. The machine whirred. It made that mechanical counting sound that usually signals relief. Dante closed his eyes. He let out a breath. He thought he had beaten me. He thought I was just an old man who forgot to cancel a card. Then the whirring stopped. It didn't end with the soft slide of cash dispensing. It ended with a harsh metallic crunch, like gears grinding against stone. The screen flickered. It turned red. A message appeared in bold white letters. Transaction denied. Card retained. Please contact financial institution. Dante stared at the screen. He tapped the glass. He hit the cancel button. He hit it again harder. "Give it back," he hissed. "Give me the card." The machine was silent. It had swallowed his lifeline. It had eaten his escape plan. "No," Dante screamed, slamming his fist against the machine. "No, no, no, you stupid machine!" He looked around. People were watching him through the glass doors of the lobby. He didn't care. He needed that card. He needed access. He stormed into the bank. He didn't wait in line. He walked straight to the platform where the branch manager sat. Mr. Henderson was a man I had known for 20 years. He was the man who helped me set up my first business account. He was the man who helped me invest my dividends. He was also the man I had visited 3 days ago with a stack of notarized affidavits. Dante marched up to his desk. He looked deranged. His clothes were wrinkled from the morning's failed eviction. His eyes were wild. "Mr. Henderson," Dante shouted, "your machine just ate my card. I need you to open it up. I need that card back right now." Mr. Henderson looked up from his computer. He adjusted his glasses. He didn't smile. He didn't offer Dante a seat. He looked at the security guard standing by the door and gave a subtle nod. "Mr. Freeman Henderson," said, his voice calm and professional, "I was wondering when we would see you." "I don't have time for small talk," Dante snapped, leaning over the desk. "The machine malfunctioned. It took my dad's card. I am authorized to use it. I have the PIN. Just get the key and open the machine." Henderson stood up. He was a tall man, and he used his height to great effect. "The machine did not malfunction, Mr. Freeman," he said. "The machine operated exactly as it was programmed to do when a reported stolen instrument is inserted." "Stolen?" Dante laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "It is not stolen. It is my father's, Isaiah Freeman. We share the account. He lets me use it for property management. You know me. I have been coming here for years. I know who you are," Henderson said, "and I know who your father is. In fact, I spoke with your father on Tuesday. He sat in that chair right where you are standing." Dante froze. The blood drained from his face. "Tuesday. That was the day I supposedly went to the hardware store. He was here," Dante whispered. "Yes," Henderson said. "He came to review his accounts, specifically the home equity line of credit that was opened 3 months ago. He seemed very surprised to learn about it. He was even more surprised to see the signature on the application." Dante took a step back. He looked at the door. The security guard had moved. He was now standing between Dante and the exit. That is a misunderstanding," Dante stammered. "My dad, he forgets things. He gets confused. I handle his finances. He probably just forgot he signed it." "He didn't forget," Henderson said, picking up a file folder from his desk. "He brought me samples of his signature. He brought me his passport. He brought me a sworn affidavit stating that he never applied for a loan and he never authorized you to access his equity." Henderson opened the file. He pulled out a document. It was a police report. "Mr. Freeman filed a report for identity theft and bank fraud." Henderson continued, his voice hard as flint. "He identified you as the primary suspect. He flagged every transaction. The down payment on the lake house, the furniture stores, the boat deposit. He disputed all of it." Dante shook his head. No, he wouldn't do that. He is my dad. He loves me. He is just trying to teach me a lesson. He wouldn't send me to jail." Mr. Henderson looked at Dante with pity. Not the pity you give to a victim, but the pity you give to a fool who doesn't realize the cliff edge is already behind him. "He isn't just teaching you a lesson," son Henderson said. "He is closing the book. We have frozen the accounts. The card is destroyed. And per banking regulations, we have forwarded this file to the district attorney's office. They are preparing an indictment." "Indictment," Dante gasped. Grand larceny, Henderson listed, counting on his fingers. "Wire fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. That is a felony in this state, Mr. Freeman. Mandatory minimum sentencing." Dante looked around the bank. The tellers were watching. The customers were watching. The silence was suffocating. He realized that the money wasn't just gone. It had never really been his. He had been playing with monopoly money, and now the banker had flipped the board. I need to call him," Dante said, reaching for his pocket. "I need to explain." "You can call him," Henderson said, "but I doubt he will answer. He told me he was changing his number. He said he was going somewhere where the signal doesn't reach liars." Dante looked at the manager. He looked at the guard. He realized he was seconds away from being detained. "I have to go," he whispered. Henderson didn't stop him. He didn't need to. He knew the damage was done. "I suggest you get a lawyer," Mr. Freeman, Henderson said as Dante backed away. "A good one. Although, without access to these funds, I am not sure how you will pay for it." Dante turned and ran. He ran out of the bank past the ATM that still held the plastic evidence of his crime. He ran to his car. He jumped in and locked the doors. He sat there hyperventilating. He looked at the gas gauge. The light was on, empty. He looked at his wallet. He opened it. $3 and a maxed-out credit card. He looked at the dashboard clock. It was 1:30. The contractor was waiting at the lake house for a check that didn't exist. Tiffany was waiting for a solution he couldn't provide. And the police were waiting for a warrant that was being typed up right now. He screamed. He slammed his hands against the steering wheel, hitting the horn. The sound blared out a long, angry note of failure. He had lost the house. He had lost the money. And now he knew he had lost his freedom. He started the car. He didn't know where to go. He couldn't go to the lake house. Bill would kill him. He couldn't go to my house. Marcus owned it. He couldn't go to his apartment. The rent was due and he was broke. He put the car in gear. He drove aimlessly. He drove until the engine sputtered and died 3 miles down the road. He coasted to a stop on the shoulder of the highway. He sat in the silence. The air conditioner died. The heat of the Georgia afternoon began to creep into the cabin. He was trapped in a German-engineered cage he couldn't afford. He pulled out his phone. He dialed my number. Call failed. I had already disconnected the line. Dante Freeman sat on the side of the road and wept. He realized for the first time in his life that the bank of Dad wasn't just closed, it had been demolished, and he was the one buried in the rubble. The sun over the Sonoran Desert was different from the sun in Georgia. In Georgia, the heat was a wet blanket that smothered you, pressing the humidity into your lungs until you felt like you were drowning in the air itself. But here in Scottsdale, on the patio of the villa I had bought with cash 3 days ago, the heat was dry. It was clean. It felt like standing next to a kiln that was firing clay into something permanent. I sat in a teak lounge chair, my legs stretched out, watching the sky turn from a blinding blue to a bruised purple as the evening set in. Luther Vance sat across from me, my lawyer, my old friend, and now my partner in the demolition of my son's ego. He was wearing a linen shirt and holding a glass of reposado tequila, looking at the iPad on the table between us. The screen displayed the foreclosure countdown for the property on Lake Lanier. The clock was ticking. They received the notice 6 hours ago, Luther said, taking a sip of the amber liquid. Southern Trust confirmed delivery. The clock has started, Zeke. 30 days. If they don't come up with $650,000, the sheriff puts a padlock on the door. I swirled the ice in my own glass. 30 days, I repeated. It seems generous. They only gave me 30 days to move into a basement without windows. Luther chuckled, a dry sound that matched the desert air. You are a hard man, Isaiah Freeman. I always knew you were tough on the job site, but this is a master class in scorched earth. I wasn't trying to be hard, Luther. I was trying to be a father. And sometimes being a father means letting your children touch the stove so they learn what fire feels like. Dante has been playing with matches his whole life because I always held the fire extinguisher. I just put it down. My phone sitting on the glass table began to buzz. It danced across the surface, vibrating with a frantic energy. I looked at the screen. Tiffany. I let it ring. I watched the name flash. I thought about the last time I saw her standing in the doorway of the lake house, blocking my path, looking at my work boots with disgust. I thought about the way she had laughed when Dante told me to use the service entrance. She called again and again. "Answer it," Luther said softly. "Let's hear the pitch." I picked up the phone. I pressed the speaker button so Luther could hear. I didn't say hello. I just listened. "Dad, Dad, are you there? Oh my God, please pick up." Her voice was high, shrill, and wet with tears. It was a performance. I had heard this tone before, when she wanted a new car, when she wanted to upgrade her engagement ring, when she wanted me to pay for a vacation she claimed was for her mental health. "I am here, Tiffany," I said, my voice calm, the voice of a man who has nothing left to lose. "Oh, thank God, Zeke, you have to help us. It is a disaster, a total disaster." She was sobbing now, hyperventilating into the receiver. It sounded like she was running a marathon while crying. "Slow down, Tiffany," I said, taking a sip of my tequila. "What is the matter?" "It is Dante," she wailed. He messed up Zeke. He made a mistake. He tried to handle the finances for the lake house, but he got confused. He trusted the wrong people. He was tricked. Zeke, he was scammed." I looked at Luther. He rolled his eyes and took a drink. Tricked. Scammed. My son, the genius real estate mogul, the man who claimed he built an empire, was suddenly a victim of confusion. "He wasn't tricked, Tiffany," I said. "He lied on a loan application. That is not a trick. That is a crime." No, you don't understand," she screamed, her voice cracking. "He was trying to surprise us. He wanted to do something nice for my parents. And now some horrible company called Justice Holdings sent us a letter. They want all the money, Zeke. All of it, right now I know," I said. "I read the letter." You read it." She paused, her breath hitching. "How I have my sources," I said vaguely. "Zeke, please, you have to do something. We are about to lose the house. My parents' house. They are old people, Zeke. They have heart conditions. If they get evicted, it will kill them. How can you let that happen? How can you have the heart to see your in-laws on the street?" The audacity was breathtaking. These were the same people who called me the gardener, the same people who told me to use the back door, the same people who drank vintage scotch while I sat in a diner. And now suddenly I was supposed to be the guardian of their housing stability. "They have a Porsche in the driveway, Tiffany," I said. "I am sure they can sleep in that." "Zeke, how can you be so cruel? This isn't about them. It is about the family I waited. I knew it was coming. The ace in the hole. The ultimate manipulation card. She had played the victim, she had played the guilt trip, and now she was going to play the future. "Zeke," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, a trembling, fragile sound. "There is something else. Something we haven't told you. We were waiting for the right time for a happy moment, but I can't keep it a secret anymore." I took a deep breath. "Here it comes. I am pregnant, Zeke." Luther raised his eyebrows. He mouthed the word lie. "I am pregnant," she repeated, sensing my silence. "You are going to be a grandfather, a grandpa. We just found out last week. That is why Dante was so stressed. That is why he wanted to secure the house. He was doing it for your grandchild, Zeke, for the baby." I looked out at the desert. I thought about the basement. I thought about the cot next to the furnace. If she was pregnant, and I doubted she was, she had been planning to raise that child in a mansion while keeping the child's grandfather in a dungeon. And now she sobbed the stress. The doctor says the stress is bad for the baby. If we lose the house, if Dante goes to jail, I don't know if the baby will make it. Zeke, please. You can't let your grandchild be born homeless. You can't let your grandchild grow up without a father. It was a masterstroke of emotional terrorism. Using an unborn child, real or imagined, as a human shield to protect a fraudster. She was weaponizing my legacy against me. I leaned forward, bringing my mouth closer to the phone. "Tiffany," I said, my voice low and hard. "Do you remember my birthday?" She stopped crying for a second, confused by the pivot. "What?" "Yes, of course. Happy birthday, Dad. We got you a cake. You got me a stale donut from a gas station," I corrected. "But do you remember what you said to me? Do you remember what you called me? when you thought I couldn't hear you, or maybe you wanted me to hear. I don't know what you mean, she stammered. You called me a burden, Tiffany. You told Dante that I was a heavy load. You told him that I was useless. You told him to put me in the basement because I was just taking up space. Silence. The kind of silence that hangs in a courtroom after a guilty verdict. I was stressed, Zeke. I didn't mean it. You meant every word I said. You looked at me and you saw a burden. You saw a weight. You saw an old man who was in the way of your lifestyle. Zeke, please. Well, Tiffany, I continued, my voice rising, powered by the heat of the Arizona ground. You were right. I am a burden. I am a heavy, old, useless burden. And burdens don't have money. Burdens don't pay mortgages. Burdens don't save lake houses. But you have money. You have to. Dante said you bought a ticket. I spent it. I lied. I spent every dime I had left on a plane ticket and a rental car. I am tapped out. Tiffany, I am just a broke old man, remember? That is what Dante told Bill. That is what you told your friends. That is not true, she screamed, her mask falling away, the sweetness replaced by the shrewish anger I knew so well. You are lying. You have the money from the house sale. You have the pension. You are hoarding it. You are selfish. I laughed. It felt good. It felt like breaking chains. I am selfish, I asked. You are the one trying to extort a pensioner to pay for a mansion you stole. You are the one using a baby as a bargaining chip. Zeke, if you don't help us, I swear to God you will never see this child. You will never hold him. I will tell him his grandfather died. You already did, Tiffany, I said, cold as ice. You buried me the day you decided I wasn't good enough to walk through your front door. You killed the grandfather when you tried to bury the man. Zeke, goodbye, Tiffany. Good luck with the baby. If he exists, I hope he takes after my side of the family, because if he takes after yours, he is going to need a very good lawyer. I hung up. The silence of the desert rushed back in, filling the space where her screeching voice had been. I looked at Luther. He was smiling, shaking his head in disbelief. You are ice cold, Zeke, Luther said. Remind me never to cross you. She isn't pregnant, I said, taking a long drink of my tequila. She had a glass of champagne in her hand at the party. She was drinking a mimosa when I knocked on the door. She is lying. She is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. It didn't stick, Luther said. No, I said. It didn't. But now they are desperate, Luther warned. Desperate people do stupid things. Dante knows you are gone. He knows you have money even if you denied it. He is going to come for you. Let him come, I said. How will he find you? I left a trail, I said. I didn't cover my tracks completely. I used my real name for the flight. I rented the car under my real license. If he hires a detective or even just uses a cheap internet search, he will find me. You want him to find you? I want him to see what he threw away, I said. I want him to come here. I want him to stand at the gate of this paradise and realize that he could have had it all. He could have had the keys to the kingdom. All he had to do was be a son. All he had to do was be decent. I stood up and walked to the edge of the patio, looking out at the golf course, the green grass contrasting with the red earth. He is going to come, I said. He is going to borrow money from a shark, or sell his wife's jewelry, or steal from his job. He is going to get on a plane because he thinks he can bully me one last time. He thinks he can force me to sign. And when he gets here, Luther asked. When he gets here, I said, turning back to my friend, I won't be the gardener, and I won't be the burden. I will be the owner, and I don't allow trespassers. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Dante. You think this is funny? You think you can hide? I am coming for you, old man, and I am not leaving until I get what is mine. I showed the text to Luther. He is coming, I said. Luther poured us another drink. Then we better get ready, he said. Arizona has strict laws about harassment, and I am a very good lawyer. I looked at the setting sun. The sky was on fire. It was beautiful. It was the end of the day, but for me it felt like the beginning. Come on, Dante, I whispered. Come and get your inheritance. It is waiting for you at the gate, and it is wearing a badge. The stillness of the Sonoran Desert is deceptive because beneath the silence there is always something hunting and something dying. I sat in my study watching the heat haze shimmer off the red rocks of Pinnacle Peak through the bulletproof glass of my window. The air conditioning hummed a low, steady note of expensive safety, but my skin prickled with the instinct of a man who knows a storm is coming. Luther was sitting on the leather sofa reviewing a file on his tablet. He looked up at me and nodded. "He is here, Zeke," he said softly. "His flight landed 40 minutes ago. He rented an economy car. He is on his way." I took a sip of my water. My hand was steady, but my heart felt like a stone in my chest. Dante was coming. My son. The boy I had carried on my shoulders, the man who had sold me out for a boat dock. He wasn't coming to apologize. He wasn't coming to make amends. He was coming because he was cornered. We knew how he got the money for the ticket. My private investigator had tracked his movements. After the bank froze his accounts and Tiffany's parents threatened to sue him, Dante had gone to the only people who would still lend him money. He went to a strip mall in the bad part of Atlanta, a place behind a check cashing store where the interest rates are calculated in broken bones. He borrowed $3,000 from a man named Razor. He put up his life as collateral. He told them he had a rich father in Arizona who would pay it all back with interest. He bet his survival on my generosity. He bet on a ghost. I watched the security monitors. The camera feed showed the main gate of the estancia. It was a fortress of adobe and iron guarded by men who were retired military. They were polite, but they were lethal. A dust-coated Kia Rio pulled up to the gate. It looked like a tin can next to the Bentleys and Range Rovers that usually pass through. The driver's door opened. Dante stepped out. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week because he hadn't. His clothes were wrinkled, the same clothes he had worn the day of the eviction. His eyes were wild, darting around, taking in the manicured cacti, the waterfalls, the sheer oppressive wealth of the place. He looked terrified. He looked hungry. I turned up the volume on the monitor. "Can I help you, sir?" the guard asked, stepping out of the booth. He was a large man with a shaved head and sunglasses that mirrored Dante's desperation back at him. "I am here to see Isaiah Freeman," Dante said, his voice cracking. "He is my father. I know he is in there. I tracked his IP address. I know he bought a house here. Let me in." The guard didn't blink. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "Appointment." Dante laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "I don't need an appointment. I am his son. He is expecting me. Just open the gate. I need to talk to him. It is an emergency." The guard looked at his clipboard. He ran his finger down a list. He knew exactly who Dante was. I had given them a photo. I had given them specific instructions. "I am sorry, sir," the guard said, his voice flat and professional. "Mr. Freeman has a strict no-visitor policy. Your name is not on the list. In fact, you are specifically listed as a barred individual. You need to turn around and leave the property immediately." "Barred," Dante screamed. He slammed his hand against the metal gate. "You can't bar me. He stole my money. He stole my inheritance. He is a thief." "Dad. Dad, come out here." He started climbing the gate. He grabbed the iron bars and tried to pull himself up his shoes, slipping on the stone. He looked like a rat trying to escape a rising tide. "Sir, get down now," the guard ordered, reaching for his radio. "This is private property. You are trespassing." Dante dropped back down, panting, sweat pouring down his face. He looked at the camera. He looked right at me, though he couldn't see me. "Dad." "I know you are watching," he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at the lens. "You think you can hide here? You think you can run away with my money? I borrowed money. Dad, real money from bad people. If I don't pay them back, they are going to kill me. Do you hear me? They are going to kill your son." I watched him. I listened to his confession. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking me to pay his ransom. He had created a debt with criminals, and now he expected me to be his insurance policy. He was still using me. Even at the edge of the abyss, he saw me only as a wallet. "Open the gate," Dante yelled again, kicking the metal. "Open it, or I will drive this car right through it." He ran back to the Kia. He got in. He revved the engine. "He is going to ram the gate," Luther said, standing up and walking to the window. "He has lost his mind." "He won't get through," I said calmly. "That gate is reinforced steel. He will just hurt himself." Dante slammed the car into drive. He floored it. The little car lurched forward, tires spinning in the gravel. He hit the gate. Crunch. It wasn't a smash. It was a pathetic thud. The gate didn't move. The front of the Kia crumpled like paper. Steam hissed from the radiator. The airbag didn't deploy. It was a low-speed impact born of impotence and rage. Dante stumbled out of the car holding his head. He fell to his knees in the driveway. He started screaming incoherently, cursing me, cursing Tiffany, cursing God. Sirens wailed in the distance. The guard had pushed the panic button. "Scottsdale Police," I said. "They have a response time of 4 minutes in this neighborhood." We watched as 2 squad cars screeched to a halt, blocking the driveway. 4 officers jumped out, guns drawn. They saw a man screaming a crashed car and a security guard pointing at him. "Get on the ground," the officers shouted. "Get on the ground now!" Dante stood up. He looked at the police. For a second I thought he might charge them. I thought he might try suicide by cop. My heart stopped. I gripped the edge of the desk. "Don't do it, son," I whispered. "Don't be a fool." But Dante was a coward. He saw the guns and he crumbled. He dropped to his knees and put his hands on his head. "It is my dad," he sobbed as they pushed his face into the gravel. "My dad is in there. He is doing this to me. He is ruining my life." The officers cuffed him. They dragged him to the patrol car. He was kicking and screaming like a toddler having a tantrum. He looked pathetic. He looked broken. One of the officers walked over to the guard booth. The guard pointed up the hill toward my villa. The officer nodded. He got back in his car. "They are bringing him in," Luther said, "or they are coming to question you." "They are taking him to the station," I said. "Disturbing the peace, attempted destruction of property, trespassing. He won't be making bail tonight." I turned off the monitor. The screen went black, erasing the image of my son being shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The silence returned to the room, but it felt heavier now. It was the silence of a tragedy that had finally played out. "He came all this way," I said softly. "He flew across the country. He borrowed money from sharks, and he didn't bring a single apology. He brought threats. He brought violence. He is desperate," Zeke Luther said. "Desperation clarifies character," Luther Franz replied. "It strips away the mask." And what was underneath my son's mask was nothing but entitlement and rage. He didn't come for his father. He came for the ATM. I walked to the bar and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. I handed one to Luther. "To family," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "To justice," Luther corrected, clinking his glass against mine. My phone rang. It was the police station. They wanted to know if I wanted to press charges for the damage to the gate. They wanted to know if I knew the man who had tried to ram his way into my life. I held the phone for a long moment. "Yes," I told the sergeant. "I know him. He is a man who owes me a lot of money. Press charges. I want him held." I hung up. "Why hold him?" Luther asked. "Because if he is in jail, the loan sharks can't get him," I said, looking out at the desert. "It is the only protection I can give him now. A concrete cell. It is safer than the street." I sat down in my leather chair. I closed my eyes. I could still hear his voice screaming through the monitor. "They are going to kill your son. I wasn't going to let them kill him. I was going to save him, but I was going to save him my way." "Luther," I said, opening my eyes. "Get the jet ready." "We are leaving?" Luther asked. "No," I said. "We are going to the police station. I am going to bail him out." Luther looked at me like I was crazy. "You just had him arrested." "I did," I said. "And now I am going to show him exactly who holds the keys to his cage. He thinks he hit rock bottom at the gate. Rock bottom is when you look into the eyes of the man you tried to destroy and realize he is the only one standing between you and the abyss." I stood up. I smoothed my suit jacket. I adjusted my tie. "Let's go," I said. "I have a meeting with my debtor." We walked out to the garage where the Bentley was waiting. I wasn't going as a father. I was going as Justice Holdings. And the CEO was about to conduct a performance review. The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and despair, a combination I knew well from years of picking up workers who had gotten into trouble on Saturday nights. But tonight, I wasn't picking up a laborer. I was picking up my son. I walked into the precinct lobby wearing a white linen suit that glowed under the fluorescent lights. I looked like a man who had just stepped off a yacht, not a man visiting a jail. I looked younger. The Arizona sun had tanned my skin, erasing the gray pallor of the Atlanta winter. The weight I had lost was the weight of carrying a grown man on my back. I approached the desk sergeant. "I am here for Dante Freeman," I said, my voice calm and authoritative. "I am posting his bail." The sergeant looked up. He checked his computer. $10,000, he said. "Cash or certified check?" I placed a stack of hundreds on the counter. It was a brick of money wrapped in a bank band. "Cash," I said. 20 minutes later, the heavy metal door buzzed open. Dante walked out. He looked worse than he had at the gate. His face was swollen from crying. His clothes were torn. He walked with a shuffle, his spirit broken. When he saw me, he stopped. He blinked, trying to focus. He didn't recognize me at first. He was looking for the old man in the flannel shirt. He was looking for the victim. "Dad," he whispered, "is that you?" "It is me, Dante," I said. He ran to me. He threw his arms around me, burying his face in my expensive jacket. He smelled like a cell. He smelled like failure. "Dad, thank God," he sobbed. You came back. I knew you wouldn't leave me." "I am so sorry, Dad. I was crazy. I was desperate. I didn't hug him back." I stood there, a pillar of white linen in a room full of gray. "Get in the car," I said. We walked out to the Bentley parked at the curb. Dante stared at it. He touched the leather seats as he got in. "Whose car is this?" he asked, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Did you rent this? Is this part of the plan?" "It is my car," I said, getting into the driver's seat. "Your car. But how you are broke. You sold the house for peanuts." I started the engine. The powerful purr filled the cabin. "We need to talk, Dante," I said, "but not here." I drove us to a diner on the edge of town. It wasn't Denny's. It was a quiet place with booths in the back. I ordered coffee. Dante ordered a burger. He ate it like a starving man, grease running down his chin. I watched him. I waited until he was done. So he said, pushing the plate away, "You have money. You have a lot of money. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me suffer? I let you suffer because you needed to feel the consequences of your greed," I said. Okay, I get it," he said, leaning forward. "Lesson learned. But Dad, we have a bigger problem. Justice Holdings. They are monsters. They sent an eviction notice to Bill and Susan. They are going to kick them out in 3 weeks. Tiffany is hysterical. She says she is going to leave me if I don't fix it. You have to help me, Dad. You have to pay them off. With your money, we can make this go away." I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot. It burned my tongue. "You want me to pay off Justice Holdings?" I asked. "Yes," he cried. "Please, just pay the mortgage, pay the HELOC, get them off our backs. Then we can start over. I will work for you. I will do whatever you want. Just save my marriage." I looked at him. I looked deep into his eyes. I saw the panic. I saw the selfishness. He still didn't get it. He thought Justice Holdings was some faceless corporation he could buy off. "Dante," I said softly, leaning across the table. "Yeah," he asked, hopeful. "There is something you need to know about Justice Holdings." "What? Do you know them? Can you talk to them?" "I know them very well," I said. I leaned closer. I brought my lips to his ear just like he used to do when he was a child telling me a secret. "Dante," I whispered, "Justice Holdings is me." He froze. He pulled back. He looked at me. His eyes searched my face for a smile, for a sign that this was a joke. There was none. What he whispered. "I am Justice Holdings." I said, my voice normal now but heavy as a tombstone. "I bought the debt. I bought the mortgage from Southern Trust. I bought the HELOC debt from First Horizon. I am the one who sent the letter. I am the one evicting your in-laws." Dante's mouth opened and closed. "No, that is impossible. You wouldn't do that. You are my dad. I am your creditor, Dante," I said, "and you are in default." He stood up. He knocked his chair over. People turned to look. "You," he screamed, "you did this. You are ruining my life on purpose." "I am collecting a debt," I said, calm and cold. "You stole from me. You forged my signature. You used my house to buy a palace for people who hate me. Did you think I was just going to let that happen? Did you think I was just going to fade away?" "But they are my family," he yelled. "Tiffany is my wife. Bill and Susan call me the gardener." I cut him off. "Tiffany calls me a burden. And you call me an embarrassment." "Well, son, the embarrassment just bought your life, and I am foreclosing." Dante looked at me with a look of pure horror. He realized then that the father he knew was gone. The soft, forgiving man who always bailed him out had been replaced by a stranger in a white suit who held the deed to his destruction. "Why?" he whispered, tears streaming down his face again. "Why do you hate me?" "I don't hate you," I said. "I love you enough to stop you. I love you enough to break you so you can be fixed. You are addicted to easy money, Dante. You are addicted to prestige you didn't earn, and I am the rehab. Rehab, he laughed hysterically. You are destroying me. Tiffany will leave me. I will be homeless. Then you will be homeless, I said. And you will learn what it means to build a roof over your head with your own hands instead of stealing the lumber from mine. I stood up. I threw a $100 bill on the table, the same amount Chloe had thrown at me. I am leaving now, I said. I have a flight to catch. Where are you going? He asked, looking like a lost child. Home, I said. To Arizona. And what about me? You have 30 days, I said. The eviction notice stands. Tell Bill and Susan to start packing. And Dante. He looked at me. Don't come to Arizona, I said. Unless you have a check for $650,000. I walked out of the diner. I left him standing there surrounded by the ruins of his expectations. He was finally seeing the world clearly. It wasn't a playground. It was a ledger. And he was in the red. I got into the Bentley. I drove to the airport. I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. I had done the hardest thing a father can do. I had let my son fall. Now it was up to him to see if he could stand up. But I wasn't done. The eviction was still pending. And I had one more scene to play out. I wanted to see Bill Montgomery's face when the sheriff knocked on the door. I wanted to see Susan packing her china. I would be back in 30 days, and I wouldn't be alone. I would bring the full force of the law and the full weight of the truth. Dante thought this was the end. He didn't know it was just the beginning of his education. And class was in session. The 30-day clock ran out at exactly 9 in the morning on a Tuesday. The deadline I had given them wasn't a suggestion, and it wasn't a negotiation tactic. It was a legal cliff edge, and they had just driven right over it. I pulled up to the lake house in a black SUV with tinted windows. I wasn't driving my old truck today. I was arriving as the CEO of Justice Holdings, and I wanted the vehicle to match the gravity of the situation. Luther sat beside me, checking his watch. He looked like a man who was about to close the biggest deal of his career. Ahead of us, the scene was chaotic. It was the opposite of the housewarming party. There were no caterers, there was no jazz band. Instead, there were 3 county sheriff cruisers blocking the driveway, their blue lights flashing silently in the morning mist. A moving truck sat idling on the street, not to move them in, but to clear them out. It was a foreclosure eviction team hired by the bank but directed by me. We got out of the car and walked up the long stone path. The air was thick with tension and the sound of shouting. I could hear Bill Montgomery before I could see him. He was standing on the front porch wearing a silk bathrobe and holding a golf club like a weapon. He was screaming at a deputy who looked bored and unimpressed. "You cannot do this," Bill bellowed, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "I know my rights. This is a civil matter. You have no jurisdiction here. I am a personal friend of the mayor. I will have your badge. I will sue this entire county." The deputy, a large man with a thick mustache, simply tapped his clipboard. "Sir, you have been served with a writ of possession. The foreclosure is final. The redemption period has expired. You are trespassing on private property. You have 10 minutes to vacate before we forcibly remove you." Trespassing Bill shrieked. "This is my house. My son-in-law bought this house. Where is Dante? Dante, get out here and fix this." The front door swung open and Dante stumbled out. He looked like a ghost. He hadn't shaved in days. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn when I bailed him out of jail. He looked at the police. He looked at Bill brandishing the golf club. He looked at the moving crew waiting on the lawn with empty boxes. "Bill, please put the club down," Dante pleaded, his voice cracking. "You are going to get arrested." "Arrested," Bill spat. "I am defending my home. You said you handled this. You said it was a clerical error. You said the money was coming. I tried." Dante whispered. "I tried to get a loan. I tried to sell the car. Nobody would lend to me. The accounts are frozen." Susan Montgomery appeared in the doorway, clutching a porcelain vase to her chest. She looked terrified, but her terror quickly turned to venom when she saw Dante. "You useless boy," she hissed. "You lied to us. You told us we were set for life. You told us we were safe. And now the police are at the door. My neighbors are watching Dante. Do you know how embarrassing this is? It wasn't about the roof over their heads. It was about the neighbors. It was always about the neighbors." Tiffany pushed past her mother. She stormed onto the porch, her eyes wild. She wasn't looking at the police. She was looking at Dante. You promised," she screamed. "You promised me you would fix it. You said your dad was going to pay. You said he had millions." "He does?" Dante yelled back, snapping under the pressure. "He does have millions. He bought the debt Tiffany. He is doing this. He is Justice Holdings." Tiffany slapped him. It wasn't a theatrical slap. It was a hard, vicious strike that echoed across the lawn. Dante's head snapped back. He put a hand to his cheek, looking at his wife with shock. "You are a liar," she screamed, getting right in his face. "You are a broke loser. I married you because you said you had a future. I married you because you said you could take care of me. And look at us. We are being evicted like trash. You tricked me, Dante. You trapped me. I didn't trick you." Dante cried, tears welling in his eyes. "I loved you. I did everything for you. I stole for you. I mortgaged my father's house for you. And you failed," Tiffany spat. "You failed at everything. You are nothing." I stood at the edge of the driveway watching the implosion. It was brutal. It was ugly. But it was necessary. The rot had to be exposed. Luther cleared his throat. "Shall we intervene, Mr. Freeman?" "Not yet," I said. "Let them finish." Bill was still waving the golf club. "Get off my porch," he yelled at the deputies. "I am not leaving. I have squatters' rights. I have medical conditions. You can't move me." The deputy sighed. He unclipped his taser. "Sir, drop the club or you will be detained." Bill hesitated. He looked at the taser. He looked at Susan, who was weeping over her vase. He looked at Dante, who was holding his face. Then he looked past the deputies and saw me. "Zeke," Bill shouted, pointing the club at me. "Zeke, thank God. Tell them. Tell these idiots who we are. Tell them to get off our property. You are the gardener, right? You fix things. Fix this." He still didn't get it. Even in the middle of the apocalypse, his arrogance blinded him. I walked forward. Luther walked beside me, carrying the file. The deputies stepped aside to let us pass. They knew who the owner was. "Hello, Bill," I said, my voice calm but projecting clearly over the noise. "Put the club down. You look ridiculous." "Ridiculous," Bill spluttered. "I am the victim here. Your son ruined us. My son made mistakes," I said, stepping onto the porch. "But he didn't buy this house, and neither did you." I turned to the lead deputy. "Sheriff, I am Isaiah Freeman. I am the sole proprietor of Justice Holdings. I hold the deed to this property." The deputy nodded. "We have your paperwork, sir. The eviction is lawful." Bill lowered the club. His mouth fell open. "You," he whispered. "You are Justice Holdings." "I am," I said. "And I am also the man whose identity was stolen to pay for this view." I turned to Dante. He wouldn't look at me. He was staring at his shoes. "Dante," I said. He looked up. His eyes were dead. "I gave you 30 days, I said. I gave you a chance to come clean. I gave you a chance to pay your debt. I couldn't," Dante whispered. "It was too much. It was exactly what you stole," I said. I looked at Tiffany. She was staring at me with a mixture of fear and calculation. I could see the gears turning in her head. She was wondering if she could charm me. She was wondering if she could switch sides. "Zeke," she said, her voice taking on that sickly sweet tone she used when she wanted money. "Zeke, please. You can't do this to family. We have a baby coming. Remember." "There is no baby, Tiffany," I said coldly. "I spoke to the fertility clinic you claim to be visiting. You haven't been there in 6 months." It was another lie. "Just like the love you claim to have for my son." She flinched. Her mask crumbled. "You are a monster," she hissed. "A rich, selfish monster. And you are trespassing," I replied. I turned to the moving crew. They were big men waiting for the signal. "Clear it out," I said, pointing to the open front door. "Clear what out?" Bill asked, panic rising in his voice. "Everything," I said. "Every stick of furniture, every rug, every painting, every bottle of wine. If it isn't attached to the walls, it goes on the lawn." "But it is going to rain," Susan wailed, looking at the gray sky. "My antiques, my velvet sofa, they will be ruined." "Then you better start loading them into your cars," I said, "because this house is being secured in 1 hour, and anything left on the grass belongs to the garbage dump." "Start." I ordered the movers. They surged forward. They moved with professional efficiency. They walked past Bill, who shrank against the wall. They walked past Dante and Tiffany. They went into the house and started bringing out the trophy life my son had built. The white leather sectional came out first. They dumped it on the wet grass. then the 60-inch television, then the dining table. No, Bill shouted, running after a mover who was carrying a box of cigars. That is imported. Be careful. The mover ignored him and placed the box on top of a pile of bedding. It was a massacre of materialism. The lawn, which had been so pristine during the party, was now a landfill of luxury goods. The neighbors were coming out of their houses, watching from their driveways. They were filming with their phones. The humiliation was public. It was total. Dante stood in the middle of the chaos. He wasn't moving. He was watching his life being dismantled piece by piece. Tiffany was running back and forth, grabbing her designer bags, trying to stuff them into the trunk of the Range Rover. "My shoes!" she screamed. "Where are my Louboutins?" Susan was sitting on her velvet sofa in the middle of the yard, crying into a cushion. Bill was arguing with a deputy, trying to explain that he couldn't drive the Porsche because he had had a few drinks to calm his nerves. I stood on the porch watching it all. I felt Luther beside me. "It is done, Zeke," Luther said softly. "The property is secure." "Not yet," I said. I walked over to Dante. He didn't flinch when I approached. He looked like a man who was waiting for the final blow. "Dante," I said. He looked at me. "You wanted to be a big shot," I said. "You wanted to live in a big house. You wanted to impress people who didn't care about you." "I am sorry, Dad," he whispered. "I am so sorry." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a set of keys. "Not the keys to this house. Not the keys to my old house. Here," I said, pressing them into his hand. He looked at the keys. "What are these?" "Keys to a storage unit," I said. "I paid for 3 months. You can put whatever you can salvage in there. It is dry. It is safe." He looked at me, tears spilling over. "Why?" "Because I'm your father," I said, "and I am not going to let your things rot in the rain. But you are not sleeping in the storage unit, Dante. You are sleeping in a shelter, or a motel, or wherever you can afford with the money you earn from a job." He nodded. He gripped the keys tight. "Thank you," he choked out. "And Dante," I added, "yeah, when you are ready to work, when you are really ready, call Marcus." "Marcus?" he asked, confused. "The guy who bought your house." "Yeah," I said. "He is a mechanic. He owns a shop. I told him you might need a job. He said he needs someone to sweep the floors and organize the tools, minimum wage. But it is honest money." Dante looked at the keys. He looked at the pile of trash on the lawn. He looked at Tiffany, who was currently screaming at a mover for dropping a hat box. "I will call him," Dante said. "Good," I said. I turned away. I walked back to the SUV. Luther opened the door for me. I got in. I watched as the movers brought out the last item. It was the painting of the lake that hung over the fireplace. It was a fake. A print. But Dante had told everyone it was an original. They leaned it against a tree. I signaled the driver. We pulled away. I left them there. The Montgomerys crying over their furniture, Tiffany screaming at the sky, and Dante standing alone holding a set of keys to a storage unit, realizing that for the first time in his life he had something that was actually his. It was a hard lesson, a brutal lesson. But as we drove away, and the first drops of rain began to splatter against the windshield, I knew it was the only lesson that would ever stick. I had torn down the house. Now it was up to him to build something real from the rubble. The rain had stopped, but the air remained heavy with moisture, and the scent of wet earth mixed with expensive perfume. I stood on the porch of the lake house, watching the systematic dismantling of a lifestyle that never truly existed. The moving crew I had hired was efficient and ruthless. They did not care that the white velvet sofa cost $10,000. They did not care that the Persian rug was an antique. To them, it was just cargo to be removed from a foreclosed property. They hauled item after item out the front door and dumped them onto the sodden lawn. It was a graveyard of vanity. A 60-inch television lay face down in the mud next to a shattered crystal chandelier. Designer clothes were piled in heaps like dirty laundry. The wind caught a silk scarf and blew it into the bushes. Bill Montgomery was running back and forth between the house and the growing pile of debris on the grass. His face was a mask of purple rage and panic. He was no longer the composed patriarch holding a cigar and lecturing me about bloodlines. He was a desperate man watching his facade crumble. He tried to grab a mover who was carrying out a mahogany humidor. "Put that down," Bill shrieked, his voice cracking. "That is imported cedar. You are scratching the finish. Do you know who I am? I will sue you. I will sue your company. I will sue your mothers." The mover, a man named Mike who had arms like tree trunks, didn't even slow down. He walked past Bill and tossed the humidor onto a pile of sofa cushions. It bounced and fell open, spilling expensive cigars into the wet grass. Bill fell to his knees, scrambling to pick them up. His dignity was gone. He looked up at Dante, who was standing near the driveway, his head hanging low, his hands in his pockets. "Do something, you useless idiot," Bill roared. "This is your fault. You brought this on us. You told us you had it handled. You told us you were a partner. You are nothing but a fraud." Dante flinched as if he had been struck. He looked at his father-in-law with pleading eyes. "Bill, please." "I tried," Dante stammered. "I didn't know he would do this. I didn't know he had the money to buy the debt. He tricked me. He didn't trick you." Bill spat, standing up and wiping mud from his knees. "You are just stupid. You let an old man outsmart you. You let a construction worker take the roof over my head. I should have never let Tiffany marry you. I knew you were low class. I knew you didn't have the pedigree." I watched from the porch, feeling a cold satisfaction. This was the man who had called me the gardener. This was the man who had talked about superior bloodlines. Now he was showing his true colors. He was a coward who turned on his own family the moment the check bounced. Susan was sitting on a dining chair in the middle of the driveway, clutching a porcelain vase and weeping. She wasn't crying for Dante. She wasn't crying for the loss of their home. She was crying for her image. "What will the neighbors think?" she wailed, looking around at the other houses where curtains were twitching and people were watching. "We are going to be the laughing stock of the country club. We can never show our faces there again." Tiffany was pacing near the Range Rover, frantically trying to shove designer handbags into the trunk. She looked like a cornered animal. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup was running, and her eyes were wild with panic. She heard her father screaming at Dante, and she stopped. She slammed the trunk shut and walked over to where my son was standing. Dante looked at her, hoping for comfort. He reached out a hand toward her. "Tiff," he whispered. "Baby, we can fix this. We can go to a hotel. We can figure it out." Tiffany looked at his hand like it was covered in disease. She slapped it away. "Don't touch me," she hissed. Her voice was low, but it carried across the yard. "Don't you ever touch me again." Dante looked shocked. "Tiff, what are you saying?" "I love you. We are in this together." Together she laughed, a harsh, broken sound that sounded like glass shattering. "There is no together, Dante. There never was. I didn't marry you for together. I married you because you promised me a life. You promised me security. You told me your father was old and sick and loaded." Dante took a step back. "What?" "You heard me," she screamed, stepping into his personal space. Her face was twisted into a snarl of pure, ugly truth. "I married you because I thought he was going to die soon. I thought he was sitting on a pile of cash and he was too old to spend it. I thought we would get the inheritance in a year or two." I stood on the porch gripping the railing. I had suspected it. I had felt it in the way she looked at me. But hearing it said out loud, hearing the raw calculation of her heart, was a different kind of pain. It wasn't pain for me. It was pain for the son I had raised to be better than this. Dante stared at her, his mouth opening and closing. You wanted him to die. I wanted a future," she yelled, throwing her hands up. "I wanted the life I deserve. And you said you could give it to me. You said he was senile. You said he was weak. You said he would sign whatever you put in front of him. But look at him, Dante. Look at him." She pointed at me standing on the porch in my white suit next to my lawyer, holding the deed to their destruction. "He isn't weak," she spat. "He is the only real man in this family. He played you. He played us all. And you let him. You are weak, Dante. You are pathetic. You are a broke loser with a stolen watch and a leased car you can't even drive anymore." Dante looked at me, then back at her. The realization was dawning on him slowly, like a sunrise over a wasteland. He had betrayed his father for a woman who was betting on his father's death. "But Tiff," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I did everything for you. I stole for you. I lied for you. I bought this house for your parents. I did it all because I loved you." Tiffany looked at him with absolute contempt. "And that makes you an idiot," she said. She raised her hand and slapped him. It wasn't a slap of passion. It was a slap of dismissal. It was the sound of a contract being voided. "I am leaving," she said. "I am taking the Range Rover. It is in my name. And I am taking my jewelry. You can keep your debt. You can keep your failure." She turned and walked toward the car. Bill and Susan scrambled up from the grass, grabbing their few precious items and running after her. They were leaving him. They were abandoning him in the wreckage he had created for them. "Wait!" Dante cried, running after her. "Tiffany, wait! You can't leave me here. I have nowhere to go. I have no money." Tiffany got into the driver's seat. She didn't look at him. She started the engine. Bill and Susan piled into the back seat, clutching their vases and cigars. "Get a job," Tiffany said through the open window. "I heard your dad is hiring." She laughed one last cruel laugh and peeled out of the driveway, spraying gravel over Dante's legs. The Range Rover sped down the street, disappearing around the curve. Dante stood alone in the driveway. The moving crew continued to work around him, dumping the last of the bedroom furniture onto the wet grass. He stood there for a long time, staring at the empty road. The silence that followed was heavier than the shouting. It was the silence of a man who looks into the mirror and sees nothing looking back. He turned slowly and looked at me. His face was streaked with dirt and tears. He looked hollowed out. The arrogance was gone. The pride was gone. Even the anger was gone. There was only a deep, crushing emptiness. He walked toward the porch. He didn't run. He dragged his feet. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. He didn't try to come up. He knew he wasn't welcome. "Dad," he whispered. I looked down at him. I saw the boy who used to follow me around the construction sites wearing a plastic hard hat. I saw the teenager who used to ask me for advice on girls. I saw the man who had just had his heart ripped out by the woman he sold his soul for. "She never loved me," he said. His voice was full of wonder and horror. "She never loved me at all. She just wanted the money. She just wanted you to die." I nodded slowly. "I tried to tell you, son," I said. "I tried to show you, but you wouldn't look. You were too busy looking at the reflection in her eyes to see the knife in her hand." Dante sank down onto the bottom step. He put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. "I ruined everything," he sobbed. "I lost you. I lost the house, I lost my job, and I did it for a woman who thinks I am pathetic. You did it for yourself, Dante," I said, my voice stern but not unkind. "You did it because you wanted the easy way. You wanted the status without the sweat. You wanted the kingdom without building the castle. Tiffany was just the mirror you used to admire yourself, and now the mirror is broken." He looked up at me. His eyes were red and raw. "What do I do now, Dad?" he asked. "I have nothing. I have debt collectors calling me. I have a criminal record pending. I have nowhere to sleep." I looked at the pile of furniture on the lawn. I looked at the empty house behind me. I looked at my lawyer Luther, who was watching with a somber expression. "You have a choice, Dante," I said. "For the first time in your life, you have a real choice. You can stay here in the mud and feel sorry for yourself. You can chase after her and beg for scraps, or you can stand up." "Stand up?" he asked. "How?" "I can't stand up. I am buried." "You are buried because you dug the hole," I said. "Now you have to climb out, without a ladder, without a rope, and without me." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a check, it was the job application for the construction site in Arizona, the one I had mentioned to Luther. "Here," I said, tossing it down to him. It fluttered through the air and landed on his knee. "What is this?" he asked, picking it up. "It is a start," I said. "It is hard work, it is hot work, it pays minimum wage. But it is honest. And if you take it, if you actually show up and sweat for your bread, you might find something you lost a long time ago." "What is that?" he asked. "Your self-respect," I said. I turned to Luther. "We are done here." Luther nodded. He signaled to the sheriff. The eviction was complete. The property was secured. I walked down the steps past my son. I didn't offer him a hand. I didn't offer him a ride. I walked to the SUV. Dante watched me go. He looked at the paper in his hand. He looked at the empty road where his wife had fled. He looked at the mansion that was never his. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just sat there on the step, holding the job application in the rain. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. He was still sitting there. But he was reading the paper. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, leaving him there. But I knew that if I picked him up, I would be carrying him for the rest of my life. And he was too heavy. He had to learn to carry himself. The Montemaris had fallen. The marriage was dead. The lies were exposed. Now all that was left was the man in the mud. And for the first time in years, I had a sliver of hope that he might actually get up. The silence that settled over the driveway was heavier than the storm that had just passed. The rain had reduced to a cold, rhythmic dripping from the eaves of the house that no longer belonged to anyone I knew. The air smelled of wet wool ozone, and the distinct sour scent of a life that had curdled. I stood by the open door of the black SUV, my hand resting on the warm metal, looking at the wreckage of my son's vanity. The lawn was a battlefield of sodden velvet, splintered wood, and cardboard boxes that were slowly dissolving into pulp. It looked like a tornado had touched down specifically to target the ego of Dante Freeman. Dante stood in the center of it all, a solitary figure in a landscape of debris. He was shivering not just from the cold dampness of his clothes, but from the shock that had finally penetrated his armor of arrogance. The Range Rover was gone, taking his wife and her parents to a future that did not include him. The Mercedes was gone, dragged away by the repo man. The house was locked, a fortress he could no longer breach. He was surrounded by things, broken things, wet things, expensive things, but he possessed nothing. He turned slowly to face me. His eyes were red-rimmed with the exhaustion of a man who had been running on adrenaline and lies for too long. He looked at Luther, who stood silently by the car, a sentinel of the law. Then he looked at me. For the first time in years, he didn't look at me with calculation. He didn't look at me to see what he could take. He looked at me like a child who had lost his mother in a crowd. He looked terrified. "Dad," he whispered. The word cracked in the air. I didn't move. I didn't offer a smile. I waited. He took a step toward me, his wet socks squelching on the pavement. Then another. He stumbled over a discarded throw pillow, fell to his knees, and didn't bother to get up. He crawled the last few feet until he was kneeling on the concrete of the driveway, looking up at me. "Dad, please." He choked out his hands, reaching for the hem of my jacket but stopping short, afraid to touch the fabric. "Take me with you. Take me to Arizona." I looked down at him. This was the moment a father's supposed to break. This is the moment where the heart softens, where the instinct to protect overrides the logic of discipline. I saw the little boy who used to scrape his knees on the playground. I saw the teenager who cried when he didn't make the varsity team. I saw my son. "I will change, Dad." He rushed on the words, tumbling out in a desperate torrent. "I will be different. I will work for you. I will clean your pool. I will mow your lawn. I will cook your meals. I don't need a salary. I just need a place to sleep. I need to get away from here. The debt collectors, the people I borrowed money from for the plane ticket, they are going to kill me, Dad. Razor said he would break my legs. He was begging for his life. He was begging for sanctuary. I will be your servant." "Dad," he sobbed, pressing his forehead against the concrete. "Just let me come home." I closed my eyes for a brief second, inhaling the scent of the wet pine trees. I remembered Lucille. I remembered how she would hold him when he had nightmares. "Be gentle with him, Zeke," she would say. "He has a soft heart." But his heart wasn't soft anymore. It was rotten. And if I brought him to Arizona, if I let him hide behind my walls and my money, the rot would just spread. I wouldn't be saving him. I would be burying him in comfort. I would be the enabler of his destruction. I opened my eyes. "No," I said. The word hung in the air, simple and absolute. Dante looked up, his face slack with disbelief. "No," he whispered. But I have nowhere to go." "I know," I said. "Dad, you can't leave me here," he pleaded, his voice rising to a shriek. "I am your son. You raised me." "I raised you for 38 years, Dante," I said, my voice deep and resonant, cutting through his panic. "I carried you when you were weak. I fed you when you were hungry. I bailed you out when you were foolish. I gave you an education. I gave you a home. I gave you a life." I took a step closer, looming over him. "And you threw it away," I said. "You didn't just lose it, son. You threw it in the trash because you thought you were too good for it. You thought the foundation I built was beneath you. You wanted the penthouse, but you didn't want to climb the stairs." "But I learned," he cried. "I learned my lesson. Look at me. I am in the mud. You are in the mud because you dug a hole," I said. "And now you want me to throw you a rope. No. If I pull you out now, you will never learn how to climb. You will spend the rest of your life waiting for the next rescue." I crouched down so I was eye level with him. "This is the last gift I'm going to give you, Dante," I said softly, "and it is the most expensive one yet." He looked at me, hope flickering in his eyes. "A check." "Money, no," I said. "Independence." I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I didn't pull out a wad of cash. I pulled out a single piece of paper folded in thirds. It was wrinkled from the heat of my body. I held it out to him. "What is this?" he asked, taking it with trembling fingers. Dante unfolded the paper. It wasn't a bank transfer. It was a job application. It was a printout for a labor position at a construction site, but not just any site. It was for a massive infrastructure project in North Dakota, the Bakken oil fields. It was hard, brutal, freezing work. It was a place where men went to disappear and rebuild themselves from the ground up. Iron Creek Construction. I said, "The foreman is an old friend of mine from the union days. I called him yesterday. I told him I knew a man who needed to learn the value of $1. I told him to work you hard. I told him not to give you a single inch of slack." North Dakota. Dante gasped, staring at the paper. "Dad, it is freezing there. It is manual labor. I am an executive." "You were an executive," I corrected him. "Now you are a debtor. And debtors don't get to choose the climate." I stood up, my knees popping. "That job pays $25 an hour," I said. "Plus overtime. They provide housing. It is a trailer, Dante. A bunk bed in a shared room with 3 other men. It isn't the lake house. It isn't the basement. It is a roof." "Housing," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "And food. 3 squares a day in the mess hall. You won't starve. You won't freeze. But you will sweat. You will bleed. And every night when you lie down in that bunk, your muscles screaming, you will know that you earned that sleep." Dante looked at the paper like it was a death sentence. "I can't do this," he sobbed. "I can't." "You have to," I said. "Because you have a debt to pay." I pointed to the paper. "You owe Justice Holdings $150,000, I said, plus interest, plus legal fees. I am not forgiving that debt, Dante. I am not wiping the slate clean." You still want the money?" he asked, horrified. "Every penny," I said. "You are going to go to North Dakota. You are going to work. And every month you are going to send a check to Justice Holdings. I don't care if it takes you 10 years. I don't care if it takes you 20. You are going to pay back what you stole. But why? Why make me pay if you have millions? Because until you pay it back, you are a thief," I said. "And I don't want a thief for a son. I want a man. And a man pays his debts." I looked at him. He was staring at the application. His tears were dripping onto the paper, blurring the ink. He looked terrified. But beneath the terror, I saw something else. Resignation. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He knew the safety net was gone. "And the loan sharks?" he asked quietly. "Razor." I looked at Luther. Luther nodded. "I bought that debt too. I lied. Or rather, Luther had a conversation with Mr. Razor. He explained that you were under the protection of a very expensive legal team and that any physical harm that came to you would result in a level of police scrutiny that his business model could not sustain." Dante looked up at me. You paid him. I didn't pay him a dime," I said. "I just made it clear that you are worth more to everyone alive and working than dead in a ditch. You are safe from him, Dante, but you are not safe from yourself." I turned to walk away. "Dad," Dante called out. I stopped. I didn't turn around. "When can I see you again?" he asked. "When can I come to Arizona?" I looked at the gray sky. "When the debt is paid," I said. "When you can look me in the eye and show me a receipt that says paid in full. When you can stand in my doorway not as a beggar but as a man who fixed his own mistakes. Then we will talk." I walked to the SUV. Luther opened the door. I climbed in. The leather seat was cool and supportive. I looked out the window. Dante was still kneeling in the driveway. He was holding the piece of paper to his chest. He looked small. He looked alone. He stood up slowly. He wiped his face. He looked at the paper again. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He turned and began to walk down the driveway. He didn't look back at the house. He didn't look at his ruined furniture. He started walking toward the main road, one foot in front of the other, limping slightly. He was walking toward the bus station. He was walking toward North Dakota. "Drive," I said to the driver. As the SUV pulled away, I watched him in the side mirror until he was just a speck in the distance. My heart ached. It ached with a fierce, burning love that refused to be soft. He was walking. He was moving. He was alive. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. But as I watched him go, I knew it was the only thing that could save him. I had stripped him of his illusions. I had taken away his crutches. Now finally he had no choice but to learn how to walk. The flight back to Phoenix was silent, but it wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of grief that I had carried with me to Georgia. It was the silence of a clean slate, the silence of a man who had finally put down a heavy load he had been carrying for 38 years. When I landed at Sky Harbor, the heat wrapped around me like a warm, familiar blanket. I walked to the parking garage and got into my Mustang. I put the top down. I drove north toward the mountains, toward the red rocks and the prickly pear cacti, toward the life Lucille and I had dreamed of but never lived. Until now. I pulled into the driveway of my villa at the Estancia. It looked different to me now. Before it had felt like an escape hatch. Now it felt like a fortress. It felt like home. I walked inside. The air was cool and smelled of cedar from the humidor. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check the stock market. I walked straight out to the patio. The sun was beginning to set, turning the sky into a bruised canvas of purple and fire. It was the kind of sunset that makes you believe in God, or at least in something bigger than the petty grievances of men. I sat in my favorite leather chair, the one that faced the valley. I placed the framed photo of Lucille on the table next to me. Her smile seemed brighter here in the desert light. "We did it, Lucy," I whispered to her. "It cost us a son, but we saved our soul." I wasn't alone for long. At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a frantic ring. It wasn't a demand. It was a polite invitation. I opened the door to find Marcus, not the young man who bought my house, but General Marcus Sterling, a retired 4-star general who lived 2 doors down. He was holding a bottle of aged bourbon and 2 glasses. "Evening, Zeke," he said with a nod. "I saw your lights were back on. Thought you might want to watch the sun go down with some company." I smiled. "Come on in, General." We sat on the patio sipping the bourbon. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about status. We talked about fishing. We talked about the best way to cure a brisket. We talked about the wars we had fought both overseas and in our own living rooms. More people arrived. There was Sarah, a retired surgeon who lived across the street. She brought a basket of oranges from her grove. There was David, a former jazz musician who had played with Miles Davis. He brought his trumpet. They didn't know I was worth millions. To them, I was just Zeke. A man with calloused hands and good stories. A man who knew how to listen. A man who had lost his wife and was finding his way back to the light. We sat there as the stars came out. David played a low, mournful tune that somehow sounded like hope. Sarah peeled an orange, the scent of citrus mixing with the desert sage. The general told a joke that made us all laugh until our sides hurt. It was the party I should have had for my 70th birthday. There was no champagne. There were no speeches about legacies. There was just genuine warmth. There was respect. I looked around at my new friends. I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't being evaluated. I wasn't being calculated. I was just being. Then my phone buzzed. It was sitting on the table next to Lucille's photo. The screen lit up, cutting through the soft darkness. Dante. It buzzed again and again. I looked at the screen. The notification count climbed. 51, 52, 53 missed calls. 53 times he had tried to reach across the void he created. 53 times he had panicked, realized the reality of the bus station, realized the cold of the North Dakota wind, realized that the safety net was gone. The general looked at the phone. Then he looked at me. He saw the name. He didn't ask. He knew. He had sons too. He knew the look of a father who has drawn a line in the sand. "You going to get that, Zeke?" he asked quietly. I looked at the phone. I pictured Dante. I pictured him sitting on a bench somewhere, shivering, holding a ticket to a hard life. I wondered if he was hungry. I wondered if he was scared. Part of me, the part that remembered teaching him to tie his shoes, wanted to pick up, wanted to send him money, wanted to say, "Come home." But then I looked at the photo of Lucille. I remembered the basement. I remembered the watch on his wrist. I remembered the way he looked at me when he thought I was nothing. If I answered, I would be robbing him of the lesson. I would be stealing his chance to become a man. "No," I said. I reached out. I didn't decline the call. I simply turned the phone over, placing it face down on the cool teak table. The buzzing stopped. The light was extinguished. "He has to walk this part of the road alone," I said. The general nodded. He raised his glass. "To the road," he said. "To the road," I replied. I looked out at the desert. It was vast. It was indifferent. It was beautiful. I realized then that revenge wasn't about anger. It wasn't about making someone else suffer. That was petty. That was small. Real revenge was refusing to let their darkness dim your light. Real revenge was finding peace in the midst of their chaos. Real revenge was building a life so full, so rich with genuine connection, that their absence wasn't a hole, but a relief. I took a deep breath of the clean desert air. I felt the bourbon warm my chest. I heard the music. I felt the presence of my friends. I was 70 years old. I was alone, and I was free. The sweetest revenge isn't hurting others. It is living a wonderful life they are never allowed to enter. For years, I thought being a good father meant giving my son the life I never had. I was wrong. By shielding him from struggle, I robbed him of his strength. By giving him everything, I taught him to value nothing. When he forgot my birthday, it wasn't just a lapse in memory, it was a declaration of my irrelevance in his world. But he forgot one crucial thing: the tree is only as strong as its roots. When you try to cut down your roots to build a view for others, don't be surprised when your whole world collapses. I didn't ruin my son, I just stopped holding up the sky for him. What would you have done? Would you have answered that 53rd call? Would you have let him come to Arizona? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please like and subscribe. There are many more stories to tell, and the desert holds many secrets. Until next time, take care of your roots.